victims of our own innocence. We didn't expect it. We were so unsuspecting. Some of us participated in it without knowing what we were doing. And to understand it, there's 200 years of history you're going to have to look at. 1400 to 1600. It's the major turning point in world history. At the end of these 200 years, the world would never, ever be the same again. Europe had come out of its bag. It had rescued itself at our expense. It had learned longitude and latitude again. Had learned how to handle ships. They had, in their search for Asia and the spices and the sweets of Asia, they had discovered Africa en route, the greater prize. We are the victims of our own innocence. We didn't expect it. We were so unsuspecting. Some of us participated in it without knowing what we were doing.
Big guy, I got the game in the chokehold like a slip knot. Too much ambition, I got too much drive. I'm probably due for a pitch stop. Black dot, reppin' the team, reppin' the squad like a mascot. Yeah, I'm the one, you know that I got it, but I still speak for the have-nots. Big guy, I got the game in the chokehold like a slip knot. Too much ambition, I got too much drive. I'm probably due for a pitch stop. Black dot, reppin' the team, reppin' the squad like a mascot. Yeah, I'm the one, you know that I got it, but I still speak for the have-nots. Yeah. It's been a hell of a run. I done bagged all of the women I wanted to bag. I probably should slow down and settle with one. Probably should hit up my mama and tell her my problem. She always wanna pray for her son. Tell her I got it, it's nothing your God could do for me. I feel much more safe with a gun. Look what I've done, just look at what I've become. They thought I was stuck in the mud, I done came up. They gotta pay like I weigh, I made them double the funds. Niggas be hating, probably cause they wifey like me and she wanna give me the buns. She got a friend, told her that she can come too because two heads is better than one. My competition is none.
Good evening, everybody. Appreciate you tapping into the Monster Warrior Clan YouTube channel. It's your boy Sean P, and the place to be. Please like the show, share the show, tell a friend we're live. We're going to get directly into this bill because we actually have a lot of information that's going to float behind that. This is our critique of Black Seminoles, the documentary by the Yarbroughs. And I apologize. I thought I spelled that name correctly, but I did in the tag. Yeah, I did in the tag, but it's not showing up right on my end, and I see that now. So let me make sure that I get that straight before anything. Please, again, y'all, like the show, share the show, tell a friend we're live. If it's an elbow claiming to be this, that, or the third, if it's a Black person that's confused with Blackness or what Black means or whatever the case may be, we need them. Oh yeah, I got them tagged in the video correctly. Okay, cool. All right, I just wanted to make sure that, please make sure that you change the quality of your YouTube video as it pertains to being able to see this clearly. I do want to say before we get started, peace to everybody in the chat. Appreciate everybody tapping in. We're gonna have an interesting build this evening, man, for sure. So this comes to my attention that there's a lot of hate or backlash behind this documentary, and I'm willing to stand in front of the Yarbroughs and take on the brunt of the hate. In my honest opinion, when I first watched it, my first take was, okay, all right, I like it. my second take was, okay, all right, you might can tweak this or tweak that, you know what I mean? And I may give you a whole nother perspective this evening. However, they did a magnificent job for what they accomplished in this video and setting foot and establishing something to build on. A lot of people are unfamiliar with certain parts of our history, our struggle, and our inclusiveness in our fight against racism, white supremacy, and even Indian supremacy against us. So we can't leave that part of our story out. Yeah, we might have intermingled, we might have admixed with some of them, but yeah, we were enslaved by a large population of them, and they didn't want to let us go. They wanted that free labor for themselves as well. So, you know, we were degraded to third-class citizens when we were recognized as citizens and through, you know, laws and legislature. Therefore, so with that being said, man, I want to share with you guys some of the comments, and we're going to come back to these comments at the end of the video. We're going to come back to some of these comments. Supreme Fire 31XD88. I should have tagged that person, but their comment, this makes sense why so many Black Americans between Georgia, Carolina, and Florida share indigenous ancestry. I am one of those. I want to know, you know, according to them, how they share ancestry. And then you had this guy. Oh my goodness, this guy right here. There we go. Brown skin isn't black, and black isn't a race or nationality. We are the copper-colored indigenous American Indians. Whew. There go that word, copper-colored indigenous. When you hear someone says that, this is immediately someone who just came into this information and has a belief and has been entrenched in that belief since probably 2016, 2017, and are not identifying their Africanness nowhere in the conversation. They are simply stating the claim to copper color, which is an issue in its own right. And we're going to talk about that too. We're going to talk about that too. I see we got Thomas, Oklahoma in the building. What's good? Six Finger said, just like us. Yeah. They did enslave themselves too. But we're going to get to it all the way. And then we got this one right here. As a Navajo and Apache, when using images of natives from the Southwest, quit substituting our faces for Black ones. You understand what I'm saying? Like that, they're having a problem. Now, I don't know if this person is even a Navajo or an Apache, but anybody in the comments, you know, they can hide their identity. But we're going to get into some of the comments, and we're going to see, because some of these comments started a whirlpool of stupid stuff. And I mean craziness. So, and then listen, Lotus, if you're going to be in the chat, respectfully, if you're going to be in the chat, please do not distract the people in the chat with your foolishness. Run your DoorDash errands and leave people be. I know you like to listen to these shows to pass time while you run your DoorDash errands. Do your DoorDashes. Do not infuse your ignorance onto no one in the chat. They do not deserve to be dumbed down to your level of ignorance intentionally, because that's what you do. So please, with all due respect, if you're going to be in the chat, make it about the bill, bro. And not your personal agenda to confuse anything and try to say this, that, or the third, because you don't have no information. You simply don't. Well, go DoorDash. All right, so I was trying to buy a little time, let people get in. We're about almost 15 minutes into the video. I want to go ahead and get started. And no, you don't. You don't have any information. If you did, it wouldn't take so long to get it. So we are going to critique live now. For me, I've seen it a couple of times. Some of you probably never seen it. So what I want to do is introduce those of you who have not seen it to the video. Make sure y'all do me a favor. Go subscribe to the channel. Go subscribe to the channel. And even share this video. All right, they had 517,000 views. It could be a few more. They can get to a cool million. Subscribe to their channel. Support the Y'all Bros. Go look at past interviews. Shoot, they even did follow up behind this. And, you know, we may even play a little bit of that. Now, they gave me permission to play this video earlier today, and I was stoked about it. So I wanted to go ahead and do the video today. I had been waiting on a reply. I got a reply, and I appreciate them for allowing me an opportunity to share the information. Now, the biggest thing for them is the fact that we don't monetize our channel. So whatever views they get from this, and if their channel is monetized, they're going to reap the reward from that as well. So with that being said, let's get into the Black American tribe they tried to hide.
What if I told you?
What if I told you?
What if I told you
That there are a group of Black Indians.
that created the largest haven
The largest haven
in the U.S. for escaped slaves?
in the 1700s. What if I told you?
What if I told you that there was a group of Black Indians that led the largest slave revolt in U.S. history?
What if I told you that there were a group of Blacks in the United States
That forced their own emancipation?
before the Civil War?
What if I told you
What if I told you that there were a group of Black Indians
that led a mass exodus along the Trail of Tears and then right out of the United States?
What if I told you?
What if I told you
What if I told you that this is the true story of the Black Seminoles, and you've likely never heard it before?
I never learned about them and they were never in my history books?
This is a story about betrayal, distrust, backstab, and about a people that have been, for some reason, lost to history. This is about the Black Seminoles, the Black Indians,
and their long, remarkable journey to freedom.
If you've been in a car accident, don't call an attorney. Use this AI app instead.
That's what I did, and that's how I got this 200.
Can't do this no more, Abigail.
What do you mean, Abraham? You're scaring me.
We've been slaves long enough now. I won't spend another day under the whip of these crackers.
Escape? Where can we go?
Mhm.
You know they'll kill us. They'll kill
Florida.
us dead.
Florida. I heard them say it's free there. It's a chance, Abigail.
Florida? It's so far, Abraham, and it's dangerous.
I'll kill anybody that gets in our way. Staying here is death. We deserve better. You deserve better. We deserve a life free of these crackers.
Live free or die trying.
Live free, die trying.
Them, along with several other enslaved Africans, made their way down to Spanish Florida. They fought slavers, bounty hunters, and many were recaptured and lost their lives along the way. Finally, several made it to freedom, at least for a while, in the swamplands of Spanish Florida.
During the same time period, there were several civilized indigenous populations scattered across these lands.
The term civilized tribes was applied to the major Native American tribes that took the bad medicine of the white man. They were classified as civilized because they had adopted the attributes of European culture, becoming Christians, sending their children off to re-education institutions, market participation, intermarriage with white Americans, and,
wait for it,
chattel slavery practices, including the purchase of enslaved Africans. Little did they know that the cotton reservations that they had would become cotton plantations after they were stolen and seized by the same white people they were in. Hey guys, sorry for the shaky video in advance, but we are on our way to a town called Mosquis, and this is another town here in Mexico. But this town is the closest town we could get to Nacimientos, which is the town that a tribe, actually the Seminoles from the USA, kind of came over here to seek refuge during times of slavery. They are warrior people. They are a fierce people. There are some survivors, and there's not a whole lot of them there. So we're hoping that we're able to make some contact.
We've been exploring stories of how like Africans made it here, and it's a variety of ways, but this community that we're going to is a completely different story and history of how they made it here.
So we're just praying for some favor as we go so we can show you guys and so we can learn about the real deal here in Mexico and Black people and their migration here. So see y'all there.
Yes, my name is Wendy Goodloe. I am a Black Seminole, and more specifically, I'm a descendant of the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts, which were the group of men that joined the military and, fought for the military in the U.S. from 1870 to 1914. So I grew up in Brackettville around that history.
We had not found out about the Black Underground Railroad that led into Mexico. We had never heard about that one.
Yeah, not many people have.
Mexico, but whoa, like, what you know about this Underground Railroad? What's going on? Black indigenous people moving to Mexico. What is this?
I know, it's a lot. That's what I always tell you. It's a lot of story. The way that our elders began the story was that in the late 1600s, around 1680s into the early 1690s, there were what would become known as the Gullahs, but they were enslaved Africans living in the Low Country who took it upon themselves to seek their own freedom. So instead of going north, they went south into Florida because Florida at that time was a Spanish territory. So it was not part of the formation of the U.S. at that point. It was owned by the Spanish.
In 1687, 8 men, 2 women, and a nursing child escaped from Carolina to Spanish St. Augustine and requested baptism into the true faith. Florida's governor sheltered runaways out of Christian obligation and refused to return them when an agent from Carolina came to reclaim them. The slaves' telegraph quickly reported this outcome, and soon other runaways began arriving in St. Augustine. Florida officials repeatedly solicited Spain for guidance, and finally, on November 7th, 1693, Charles II issued a royal proclamation,
giving liberty to all, the men as well as the women, so that by their example and by my liberty, others will do the same.
Mose was established freedom seekers who were making their way down from the Carolinas, escaping slavery. If they made it down to Spanish Florida, they could live free.
And once they got there, they found that there were already people there who were living free. There were formerly enslaved Africans, there were free Blacks who were living on the land.
At Nero's town on the Swanee River. Here on the Apalachicola River, even before the one here at Prospect Bluff, you had a settlement near Ocheesee Bluff. They established a separate one where there were several hundred Maroon fighters. You had many settlements of free Blacks all through Florida, particularly, late 1700s, early 1800s.
There were also Native Americans. At the same time it was happening, there was the group of Creeks who lived just north of Florida. And because of moral differences, they splintered into the Upper Creeks and Lower Creeks. And the Upper Creeks decided that they wanted to break away and go down into Florida to get away from the Lower Creeks who were taking on more European ways of life. And one of those, again, chattel slavery. That's where the idea of the word Seminole comes from, is that some linguists believe that it is a Creek word or Muskogee word, and it's pronounced Seminole or Seminole. They believe it means runaway because these Creeks believe that part of their group was running away. And so it's also interesting that it fits for what would become the Black Seminoles because they were essentially running away as well. They formed their own villages, but were interacting with the Seminoles, so they would become known as the Black Seminoles.
African and indigenous people lived and worked closely together. And in time, They came to view themselves as a part of the same loosely organized tribe, cultivating a mutual respect of each other's cultures. The Africans adopted a lot of the Indian garb, and the Indians adopted African agriculture, music, and folklore. Lived this way for over 100 years, raising generations of children in freedom. As Florida continued to be a haven for Black freedom, this didn't set too well to Bellum, Georgia. They shared a border, and contentions were high. At this point, there was a lot of retaliation going on. The U.S. military launched raids, tried to steal slaves, steal cattle, and encroach on this Spanish land.
The United States felt that the existence of this community served as something of a beacon of freedom for slaves from Georgia and the Carolinas, or even the Creek Nation, to slip away from bondage and come down here seeking freedom in Florida.
In the spring of 1818, the U.S. government launched their attack.
As soon as the U.S. military was dispatched at the orders of Andrew $20 Jackson, this marked the beginning of the First Seminole War.
The 1818 battle at Suwannee is again recorded by the U.S. military. The people referred to as Black warriors held off the U.S. troops.
The Seminoles, known as the Red Sticks in that area, and the Black Seminoles held their ground and held up their contract with the Spanish to defend the border.
They ultimately fell back, and the village was destroyed. Fell back to was the Manatee River, Tampa Bay, Angola.
At the conclusion of the First Seminole War, the Spanish sold Florida to the American $1 billion. This drove the Seminoles and the Black Seminoles deeper into Central Florida, deeper into the Everglades. It was here that the two bands grew closer, and it was also here that birthed two legendary leaders, Osceola for the Seminoles and John Horse, aka Abraham, to lead the Black Seminoles.
So the First Seminole War began between 1816 and 1817 when General Andrew Jackson went in and started a war.
I read somewhere that he was trying to recapture Black. Formerly enslaved. They weren't even formerly enslaved at this period. They were never even.
They were generations removed. Yeah, they were generations removed. And Andrew Jackson, he was the only president who ever ran on the idea of committing genocide. So he promised that he would wipe out, all Native Americans and return formerly enslaved Africans to their owners.
This game, you're not ready for.
Andrew $20 Jackson was POTUS number 7. This wealthy Tennessee enslaved, known to be the poor white man's champion, with a base known for their riots and lynching, a presidency full of scandal, he would be best known for his deep hatred of Black people and Indians, promising to deal with the banks, restructure the government, and deal with the nagging Indian problem holding the country back.
The Indian problem. This was the name given to Indigenous Americans just living their life on their land, but land that the colonial settlers wanted. They wanted to take their land, their joy, their happiness, but especially that land.
There's almost a mythology about this, that somehow when the Pilgrims arrived, they were dragging land behind them. There was no land brought here. The land here was Native nations. And what the states needed, it's what it wanted. They wanted all of it. They wanted everything.
Between 1830 and 1850, about 100,000 Native Americans were evicted at gunpoint from their ancestral homelands. They were escorted by the United States military to the designated Indian Territory in present-day Oklahoma. The relocation, known as the Trail of Tears, was the result of genocidal legislation called the Indian Removal Act of 1830, signed into law by President Andrew Jackson.
Hey, what's up, family? Hope you guys are enjoying this video. And if you are, please consider sharing this video. We found so many lies and unearthed so many interesting things that we never knew, and we're hoping that you found some new things as well. We want to share it with the world. So sharing this caring, and if you share this thing so we can let the community know what's going on.
Like to see more content just like this, consider joining our Patreon, where you get a window seat into our travels and stories about the diaspora.
All right, y'all, back to the video. Share this thing.
So the first Seminole War happens, and then by 1838 is when the second one starts. So there is a span of about 20 years between. And within this time, the Seminoles and Black Seminoles have only gotten closer. The Black Seminoles are highly militarized. And so when the war does begin, they are out there on the front line, so much so that General Jessup says, you know, this is not an Indian war, this is a Negro war, because they were at the front lines.
Jessup, it was a Black war, a Negro war. It was the largest Negro uprising the United States had ever seen. It's in no history where more than enslaved rose up and came to join arms with the Black Seminoles to fight against the United States of America and for freedom.
After the defeat of the First Seminole War, Andrew Jackson went on to become President of the United States of America, and he signed the Indian Removal Act. At his signing of this act, they knew that a war was coming, and they prepared accordingly.
John Horse and his compatriots gathered the troops together. They went around to the local plantations all throughout Florida, rallying up the enslaved and telling them that they can get their freedom, and they listened. At his call, they all came to fight against the United States government. They fought tooth and nail with everything that they had and launched a 7-year war that cost the United States government more than they had ever spent and more than they would spend ever into the Vietnam War. They caused more casualties and more damage than any other slave rebellion in U.S. history. So why haven't you heard about it?
The reason that they fought so hard and were known for fighting was because for the Seminoles, they would just die. But for the Black Seminoles, they would be returned to slavery. So that was what they were fighting for and against. And so the thing was that they didn't just kill, they killed twice. You know, they wanted to make sure that their enemies were dead.
John Horse, and the excellent strategist and leader that he was, told the United States government that he would lay down his arms if and only if they would give them papers of emancipation for each and every one of his soldiers. And they agreed to this. So they put down their arms, and the Black Seminoles began their trek on the Trail of Tears, headed to modern-day Oklahoma.
The ancient Egyptians understood that they could use sound to reduce their weight.
They lost lives as well, but I believe their disposition was a bit different from the other indigenous people that were on that trail. I believe that these Africans were looking forward to that reserved place in modern-day Oklahoma. I believe they saw it as a new start and a new life that awaited them. But when they got there, they found old demons, they found promises, and they found that Uncle Sam is the same dirty uncle that he's always been.
But of course, everything changed by the time they got to Oklahoma.
This reservation wasn't their happily ever after, nor was it the end of their story. At this reservation, the U.S. Attorney General, Nathan Clifford, announced that the U.S. government didn't even have the authority to grant their freedom in the first place. In other words, their emancipation was essentially revoked.
Y'all, we have made it out here to the remotest of the remote.
We are in El Nacimiento de los Negros.
Now, out here, these people are the people that never bow down. You guys, their history dates way back, from North Carolina down to Florida, from Florida to Oklahoma, and from Oklahoma walked all the way into Mexico, a 6-month hike.
And made it here to freedom in 1850.
The story goes a little something like this.
But for the Black Seminoles, they were threatened with being captured and returned to slavery because it was outlawed territory. And so there were slave catchers there.
Anyone with African
features were being kidnapped and sold off in the night.
So pretty quickly, John Horse started looking for a way out.
A group of Black Seminoles led by the Wildcats, who was like the chief of the Seminoles, and John Horse, who was essentially the chief of the Black Seminoles, made their way down to Mexico. Mexico had abolished slavery, and it was a dream of both John Horse and Wildcat to make it to freedom, to make it here to Mexico. They got here in 1850 and settled in this town in the state of Coahuila called El Nacimiento de los Negros.
My name is Corina Torralba Harrington. I was born in Nacimiento, Coahuila, Mexico, Comunidad Negros Mascogos, and I migrated to the United States when I was about 7 years old.
When they made it to Mexico, it was the land of milk and honey. They were greeted with open arms because Mexico had a problem. They had raiding parties. The Comanche and Apache tribes were raiding all along that Mexican border. Also, the Americans were encroaching, as they do, all along that border. So Mexico received them with open arms, as they did for every Black self-emancipating individual. But for these people, they gave arms, they gave weapons and land in the state of Coahuila, in a little city called Nacimiento. The Black Seminoles that settled in Mexico, particularly the ones that settled here in Nacimiento, were granted certain rights back in the 1850s for a particular set of reasons. They received land, they received supports from the government, and they received autonomy, which allowed them the ability to govern their own communities, have their own type of laws, as long as they assured the government that they would protect the border. At that time, the Apache tribes and Comanche tribes were raiding all along the border, and the United States was pretty much encroaching in the area, trying to get more and more land. And these guys settled here and ruthlessly defended the border. There are many recorded exploits of them chasing down Apache, Comanche, Americans, Texas Rangers. Their reputation did not even compare to what they really were. In fact, they defended that border so fiercely that after the Emancipation Proclamation, the United States military came knocking.
In 1870, the United States Army sent a message to the Black Seminoles chief, John Horse, inviting him to enlist with them to become Indian scouts and help them fight the hostile Native Americans. They accepted because they were promised repatriation, but they also believed that they would be granted land, food, provisions, and reimbursements for traveling costs. But there's one thing about promises made to the Black Seminoles from the US government. Not a single one was ever kept.
You know, the amazing thing to me is that Mexico is really the only country or government that honored their promise. So out of the British, the Spanish, the Americans, the Mexicans were the only ones.
Despite this, the Black Seminoles fought fiercely alongside the Buffalo Soldiers, and not a single member of the Black Seminole Indian Scouts was killed or seriously injured despite all of their fights with hostile Native Americans. They never failed a mission, and several members received the highest honor in the military. After their services were no longer needed, they were kicked off the fort from which they had served and eventually settled in Brackenville, Texas. So walking around the streets of El Nacimiento de los Negros, it's a very small community, a very tight community, and very quiet. But walking through the streets, you see the signs of their history.
It's just really cool being here. This area it's Afro. This area is distinctively different. Again, we had to travel a long way from a very small town just to get here. It's remote, and you know why it's remote. Have you been back lately at all?
Yes, I go back every Juneteenth because of our Juneteenth celebration there. It is different. I was very surprised to when I found out that we actually celebrate Juneteenth down there. When I started learning all the history, I was like, well, why do we celebrate it? You know, if our people freed themselves, you know, they liberated themselves. Right. It was that important to them. They decided to have that celebration. And, you know, we've always known that celebration as El Baile de los Negros, o El Día del Negro, o El 19. So
it's a day of honor. That's beautiful. So it's in solidarity almost. It's
Yes,
like, you know,
exactly.
we are with
I also have a Casa de la Cultura there, and I'm wearing my shirt today. So I go back for that a lot too, and other projects that I'm working on there.
I never knew about any Black Seminoles coming over to Mexico. I never knew about it until maybe last year.
So our history starts in Africa. Our people were the people that would rather die than be enslaved. To just tell, everything that our people did, because I just want those kids to know who our people were, the warriors that they were. They were brave, what they did. I want them to know what kind of people are their people, they come from.
So many people believe it was only one way, and that's not the way. That's not even the real way it was. We didn't just sit down and take it. We didn't just come over here and say, okay, we're just gonna be slaves. Yep, that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
You know?
Mhm.
No, not hardly. So that is the main reason I'm telling the story, so people can get the real
that we know that are getting involved, especially here in the United States, just if, we're Native, we're not Black.
Yep.
So all I have to say is to those people is, okay, that's your story. This is my story. If you're just Native, then you're not part of the Black Seminoles. That's not something that I'm making up. We cannot tell our story and take away our Blackness, our Africanness, our Negro, whatever it is that you want to call yourself, we cannot tell our story taking that away. Throughout this video, we have been diving into the cultural heritage and influences of the Black Mascojos, or the Black Seminoles. And it's so interesting because it's this mix of like American indigenous, it's a mix of African, and now that they've been settled here in Mexico for a while, it's a mix of Mexican also. It's really interesting to dive into and reminded me of diving into my own culture and history. We recently took DNA tests with my heritage, kind of dive in and find out what we're made of. If you're interested in finding out your heritage and diving into your culture as well, check out My Heritage. They are one of the top family history and DNA services out there, and it's a great way to know what you're made of.
All right, so that's the conclusion of the video. All right, that's the conclusion. So my natural reaction when I first saw this was, I didn't like the title. I think putting Black Indians in there was tricky. One of the reasons is because it triggers a sect of so-called Aboriginal, Indigenous, or Native Blacks that feel like they always been in the Americas. I also thought that that's the sensitivity of Indian and Black going together just didn't hold weight. But I realized the intent. Our Blackness denotes our African ancestry. So regardless, for me and you, when we hear the word Black, we know it denotes Africanness. But when someone who's trying to detach themselves from Africa, when they hear they go in a whole nother direction. For people who have this sense of ignorance within themselves to not understand that in the United States, people of African descent, Negro denotes people of African descent. Colored denotes people of African descent. Then you don't have a problem with the words no more. See, we don't have no problem with words. People are trying to detach themselves from something and self-proclaim the identity of others have a problem with the word. And these ideologies are conflating history. They are rewriting, and they are revisionists out there that are so compelled to confuse us. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So what I want to do here before we leave the video is I want to go back to the Yarbroughs channel, and I want to show you a video that they uploaded. Okay. This was 4 days ago. And we're going to visit it. And I want you to hear something that they say in this episode.
The cannabis industry is exploding nationwide, and that's why I created the Master Mentors Live educational platform to
Welcome to the Window Seat Podcast, a Yarbroughs viewpoint of travel, and a whole lot more. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and make our day.
Top of the line, y'all. We just dropped the mind blowing. That's all I'm gonna say. That video, the more we found out, the more epiphanies that we had. It was absolutely wow. I don't even. What did you think, baby, about the video?
So first of all, there's certain videos that we call Yarbrough classics, right? Those are the ones that are a bit more documentary style. We put a bit more of research behind it, following up on stories, following up with people, and things like that. This, I would say, is a Yarbrough classic, and it was a story of the Black Seminoles, which originally started off with finding out how they made it to Mexico.
This particular video sparked us because we found out that there was a southern section of the Underground Railroad that we knew nothing about going into Mexico. We're like, really? What's that all? And then we found out it was a Black nation that made their way to Mexico on this Underground Railroad. And then it kept being another and epiphany after epiphany after epiphany. So if you have not seen that video, we want to urge you to go down to the description or in the highlighted comment and watch this video. It is dope, and it's so. For instance, did you know that there was a Black nation that existed in the 16s, 17s, 1800s that never tasted slavery? That rebelled. I know that. That rebelled and had successful rebellion. In other words, they won their freedom, murdered their masters, burnt down the plantation, told the U.S. government, give us our emancipation or we ain't putting our guns down, got emancipated. Government took their emancipation back once they put their guns down, and then they just went to Mexico and became heroes.
Right. Like, I think the only thing I heard was like the Nat Turner Rebellion, right? That was one of the rebellions, and maybe another one, but this whole entire story that took place over decades, over
decades, honey.
A few hundred years, if you're counting like the formation of the Black Seminoles, it was never taught, especially being from Florida and finding out that a lot of this took place in Florida. Never knew.
Let's give them that backdrop. So just the cliff notes in case you haven't seen the video. America, Amerikaka, KKKA, kidnapped Black people from Africa, brought them over here. And not even America, the British, right? Brought us over here, and we started work, right? And rice plantations and all that kind of good stuff. Own communities like Gullah communities. And a lot of times, like when I was a kid, we'd always be like, man, I wouldn't be that. I'm be partner that I would just whatever. There were enslaved people who committed mass suicide. There were enslaved people that had many good, successful rebellions and never got caught. The only ones that we ever are people who got caught and got hanged. This I'm speaking of these their plantations and went down to a place that I never even know existed, a place called La Florida. Tell me about La
let's
Florida,
let's
baby.
give a name to it. So this overall story is about overall video. It's about the Black Seminoles, finding out how they were formed and where they had to travel to, what was a part of their journey, and where they ended up. So Florida, at this point, 1600s, Spanish owned. Okay, Spanish owned it. It was not Florida, it was La Florida. Okay, and Florida had its own kind of thing going on, and there were free Black settlements just kind of sprinkled all throughout the state.
Not even little Black settlements, lots of Black settlements throughout the state of what is now called Florida, right? And these people lived with a lot of, we'll call them independent indigenous people, right? People who left their tribes. And there were some tribes who were based in Florida as well. So a hodgepodge of people living in peace in this area, this unsettled area, this unsettled frontier. Now, if you don't know, there was also a lot of contentions between the Spanish, the British, eventually the Americans over this area. So Spanish is like, look, if any of you enslaved people can make it down here, you're safe and you have peace. Now, if you want to be in our military, and if you came to Catholicism, well, then we'll make you subjects of the crown. You're protected. You got status. We're going to give you jobs. We're going to give you a stipend. We're going to take care of you. And they did.
This was a whole like Spanish royal decree. Okay. And that was just like a beacon calling other enslaved people down to Florida, because if they don't have to go to the north, right? They don't have to go all the way to Canada. They can just
you ain't got to go to Canada, baby. You can just jump 2 states away. 2 states away. How come we never heard of this in school? I did not know that there were free Black settlements throughout. Look, there was a fort, and this is how the war started. So there was a fort, right? The British had a fort down there, and y'all know American Revolution. The British lost; they had to leave. So they gave the keys to their forts to the free Black people. They're like, "Here y'all go, give them hell, give them hell." So the Black people moved into this fort, and there were Black people in the British military called Colonial Marines, the Colonial Marines. Okay. They gave their keys to the Colonial Marines. Now, these are self-emancipated individuals who have gone down to Florida and La Florida, been trained by the British military on how to be, militant soldiers, right? And they gave them the keys to the fort. Along with those keys, they get gunpowder, all kinds of weapons. It's a straight up fort. It's called Fort Bluff. Now, Prospect Bluff. Now, it's a whole city that's going on inside of this fort. I told y'all, imagine this. The fort is like at the edge of Florida, right? And all these other places, the settlements are deep in Florida. They all around, right? On the edge, they got a military front, pretty much. A Black military front for the most part.
And this is like on that Florida-Georgia borderline, right?
Yep. So the Americans had a name for this fort, and it was not Fort Bluff. What was the name, baby?
The Negro Fort. The Negro Fort.
Mr. Andrew Jackson, Sergeant, Lieutenant, whatever the hell office he had at the time, General Jackson. Do you think he called it Negro Fort? Because, he owned a bunch of slaves. He promised to get all slaves back to their owners and promised to take care of the Indian problem if he ever made it to office. Do you honestly think this man, he called himself a representative of the poor white man? Do you think he called it Fort
Negro?
He
probably had another name, a few other names for this fort, but I think history, the way history is written, is to try to be a little bit PC.
I think that's amazing. I think when you try to PC history, you miss the context. I read a bunch of letters that soldiers wrote home, and a bunch of things, a bunch of newspaper articles from like the 1700s all the way through to the late 1800s. And, it was a mixed bag like we have right now. You know how he who should not be named got in office, right? A lot of ignorance is represented, but a whole lot of people are like, man, I'm not with this, but I need to feed my family. Like it's those letters,
so
maybe
it humanized them.
I really, there was a people that was like, this stuff is wrong. Job that was wickedness in high places. So anyway, he has to go down and bomb this fort. He's calling it Fort forever, and he finds a way to come down and bomb this fort, and they kill upwards of 300 men, women, and children that lived inside that fort. Now on the border of what will become Georgia and Florida, indigenous people called red sticks. Ooh-wee. So these are the ones who, we don't want you on our land, white man. We don't want to be with you. We don't want to be around you. We don't want our children to know you. We want to kill you. We want to scalp you. We want to see you suffer. They connected with the brothers, right? And they just got along nicely. They became family.
They
As
had
a
a
matter
common
of fact,
enemy.
Right. Enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? But they grew together. They took on each other's different identities and whatnot. And these people, and deeper, it's a lot deeper than that, but they will become what's known as the Black Seminoles. The Black folk, they became the Black Seminoles, and then there were Seminoles. And can you imagine what that border was like?
Contentious.
Boy!
Yeah.
Look, you got, now imagine this. These brothers and these Indians, these indigenous people, are growing crops and trading with everything. They're trading with Spain. They're trading with the Brits because the Brits are still in the area. They're trading even with the people from the United States, right? And all they want is guns. So
They had a
so
mission. Okay.
they are armed to the teeth, honey.
They were
They
strapped.
they was strapped like what? You know what I'm saying? Like they was
Interesting
ready.
combination, because it's like you have all these guns. You're tired of people coming over here who ain't supposed to be. They ain't the Spanish, but they crossing into another nation's territory and they're not supposed to. Okay, I can see how you can get fed up.
I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. I read about some raids that they conducted too. They were raiding the Georgian people who will become Georgians as well. You know what I'm saying? Can you imagine being an enslaved person in Georgia looking at that border?
Look, I bet it was like, as soon as nightfall, make a plan, like we going.
So in Detroit, Wyoming and Finkel, in Kalamazoo, it was on Westnedge, a couple of gas stations on Westnedge. There were we'd have little races, and we'd have places where brothers would just come together and hang out on a Saturday night or a Friday night. Too young to get in the clubs. You know what I'm saying? A bunch of older men there trying to pick up the young girls. People turn on their music. It used to be Belle or downtown, and people just enjoy themselves. That's what I feel like the border was. I think the border was the place to be. I think that brothers got on that border and they would look over there at Georgia and be talking. I feel like they talk so much trash. Oh, brother, we coming for you. Yeah. Oh, I feel like it was at that border. I feel like it was a situation.
I feel like there's probably a lot of like taunting going on, especially if you have white settlers, slave owners on just across this imaginary border.
Real life, real rednecks. The real redneck there, yeah. They had the t-shirts that said America on it. You know what I'm saying? And then hillbilly on the back. You know what I'm saying? Like they were there, and they taken them brothers over the border, and the red sticks over there. They jibber jabbering, and they're doing raids, organized raids over in the United States.
So what kicked off that first Seminole War?
President Jackson bombing that fort. So after he bombed that fort, the red sticks, Prospect Bluff, the Negro fort. History just be so fake with it, man. Because when they write the history, right? When they write the history, it ain't never gonna be right. So anyway, so then the retaliation was the red sticks and the brothers, the Black Seminoles, went and shot up a boat that was crossing one of those rivers. And that boat, they picked the right one, man. They had some good intelligence. They had sergeants, the wives of sergeants, of different military officers, and the children of different military officers. They killed everybody, I think, except 2 people.
Okay, so that was
it was. Do you think blowing up a fort with 300 people in it was a bit much?
No, I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying one thing equals another thing. I'm just saying it's a bit much.
It was contentious, and that was the overflow. And then we had the first Seminole War. At the conclusion of the Seminole War,
and like y'all the best at what you do, and we could really use your services. Like, can y'all come work?
Come run with us, man.
Can you work with us, please?
So I would, watch the whole story, y'all. It's an awesome video, really good video. It was a passion project. Took us a whole week and a half to produce it. Took us three months to research it. We hope you guys enjoy it. it was a good video. Did you like it?
Yeah,
The end
I
product?
really enjoyed learning about it and getting the opportunity to actually go to the town of Nacimiento to
Oh,
see
yeah.
how
Classic material.
to
What
see
about
the
the ladies
mural
we interviewed? They
wall
were
of the
cool people
African
too, right?
history. They were dope. I'm so glad that they like agreed to talk to us and share about their history.
Man.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. And I hope we didn't bore y'all with that. We found it
All right,
absolutely
so
amazing.
that's their reaction after they dropped their video. I gave you a little bit about my first take. I'm gonna give you a little bit more here in a moment. I want to get to something that I agree with the Yarborough saying in the message to me. And that's this anti-African sentiment. Before we get into the long lessons and the evidence that I'm going to show or things that I'm going to bring up, this was inspired by the comment section. This person, I showed this comment earlier. Brown skin isn't black and black isn't a racial nationality. We are the copper-colored indigenous American Indians. He got 45 replies. This person says, I agree, black is a color that results from the absence of complete absorption of visible light. I am an African American, not black. My ancestors are Nigeria, Ghana, Barbados, and Ireland. Thank you for sharing. Peace and blessings. Somebody goes behind Jean X Jean and says, your last name is Washington, and you are not African, but rather made the tribes of Nigerian, Ghana, Barbados, and Irish, which is why they have your DNA, not the other way around. African American is an oxymoron word that doesn't exist in reality, just like the color black. So if African American is an oxymoron, then wouldn't it be an oxymoron for Ab Power to be saying that he's an American, or that the Aboriginal community argued that they are an American? Wouldn't that be the same denotion? Because this person is telling you that they are a part of two continents. They were a part of a Holocaust that kidnapped their enslaved ancestors and brought them to a place that's called Africa. I mean, it's called America. The place they left was called Africa. But anyway, Gene does the right thing and says, thanks for sharing your thoughts. OU says, so true. So somebody agrees. Just like the Caribbean. Then another person, this person asks Gene, if your ancestors actually from Nigeria or Ghana, you're an outlier. Did a DNA test tell you you're Ghanaian and Nigerian? You can't rely on that because your genealogy may tell you something different. And also there's the fact of more Indians were shipped to West Africa than Africans shipped to the Americas. The 10 million number is a lie, no empirical proof, and the shipping data doesn't support it. 400 to 500,000 is more accurate, with the most shipped to Brazil. People of Barbados are predominantly Black, Irish, and North American Indians and Africans. Haiti, Jamaica, and Barbados, where they shipped most of the North American Eastern and Gulf Indians. The Maroons were mostly Indians, and Black Irish Africans were the only 20% of the transatlantic trade, which makes them outliers. And some of them are Indians, and the Portuguese and Spaniards stole from the Americas in the 1500s. Trade started in 1493 in the Americas. Cap. With the Black Caribs, Columbus took back with him. So let me address. Let's work this one slow. Did a DNA test tell you that you're Ghanaian and Nigerian? You can't rely on that because your genealogy may tell a different story. Pause. In order to emphatically understand your family's history, you need not only a DNA test, but your genealogy tree done. They're both going to tell you a story. One's going to substantiate the other. The other is going to support the other. Together, they give you a wider view. One, they tell you who you are genetically, the DNA test does. You know, the things that you can't see outside of the skin complexion of a person and their physical traits. We're talking what they are made of, right? Since all humans are 99.99% identical, that 0.1% is emphatically important in understanding your struggle. What Jean basically stated was that her ancestry was Ghanaian and Nigerian. I understood that, even though she didn't say the words, I understood that to be. And she has some Ireland in her because of the admixture that transpired during her family's Holocaust. And with all due respect, we know that DNA is legit. It provides empirical evidence in support. So next you say, since we can't rely on those, you went ahead and said there's a fact more Indians were shipped to West Africa. So show me the Indians that were in the Americas and shipped to Africa. What time period was that? That never transpired. The only Indians that left the Americas and ended up in Africa were traders. And those that were passengers on their way to Europe. You got your dates all over the place. And if you are insinuating at Gary Tisdale Funkster 1, if you're insinuating that this Dane Calloway notion of the slave trade didn't happen, it happened in reverse, you're still wrong mathematically. So the true story is 15 million people left the coast of West and Central Africa. 12 million made it. 3 million didn't. And that was over a long period of time, hundreds of years, recent history. That struggle, they landed in South America, Central America, before arriving in what we know today as the United States of America. When that transpired, sir, there was a network that was going on. The evidence for that can be contained in shipping records. You can find the majority of the shipping records here in the United States, in the National Archives, in public libraries and university libraries, where they have scanned documentations of the primary sources. Here's the bigger picture. Them black people that you're talking about in the Caribbeans are of African ancestry, and some of them admixed. This is what I mean by this color game that people playing. This is what I'm all skin folk and kinfolk. There's no such thing as a black Irish. If you look up what a black Irish is, you just told this person, a commenter above just told this person that they cannot use the word black. Black doesn't agree. And then you turn around and you say it. Choctaw Hiller, pseudo Hiller, says that brown skin isn't black and black isn't a race or nationality, but yet you turn around and you use the term black to represent Irish. He said you can't use that. It doesn't exist. But for layman's, the denotion of Irish, if you go look up what black Irish are, they tell you that the black Irish are descendants of Africa. The Haitians, the Jamaicans, and the people of Barbados all descend from the coastlines of West and Central Africa. The Maroons in which you're referring to, African ancestry. The actual slave trade for Africans started in the 1415s. Do the math.
They were being shipped directly to Europe. And I'm talking about the European involvement. Way before that, if you want to talk about Arab involvement. So before a native or indigenous, a paleo, Amerindian was ever sent to Europe, Africans had already been in the midst of a slave trade. The Portuguese are the first traders. I don't think that you mentioned the Portuguese until down here at the bottom, where you tried to slick this one in. Transatlantic trade, which makes them outliers, and some of them are Indians, the Portuguese and Spaniards stole. Bull cap. The Portuguese knew nothing about Indians. The Portuguese knew everything about these people in Africa. The Portuguese wasn't involved over in the Americas. So why would you even denote that the Portuguese was involved in what the Spanish had done? Show me the Portuguese traders that crossed the Atlantic in that time period that you're referring to, looking for Native Americans when they were heavily invested in Africa. Their missionaries was in Africa. The Spanish, before the arrival of the Dutch and the other players that get involved in that, the Spanish was making it a thing of their own. So this shows that you don't have the integrity to understand world history and read and cross-reference the information that went. So you took a shot at Gene Washington, who was being an honest person and providing what they provided. Then you double down and said something to somebody else. She needs to do her genealogy. It may contradict her DNA. It'll never contradict her DNA, ever, ever. So G. Corina says, and this is a trigger word, I am an African American from the west coast of Africa. I'm native to Africa. My ancestors came during the transatlantic slave trade. Here we go. Judge Joe says before Columbus rediscovered America, there was zero African and European ancestry among the indigenous Taínos in the Caribbean. Gary Tisdale, he asks Gary Tisdale and say, question, did those black hairs that you're referring to have extremely curly hair or afros? Or did they have straight black hair? Morty says, as an African American, I really wish they stopped this. No, seriously, truly, we're escaped slaves that became chief of certain tribes and even married Native Americans. But with the exception of the Geechee and the Gullah tribes, there were no black Indians. Talk about cultural appropriation. Black people are the ringleaders of this. Agree with this last part. Agree with Gullah. There was a slight chance of admixture in those tribes of Native Americans. I agree with that too. But black people are ringleaders of cultural appropriation. As an old black man said to me, there are no black men or white men, only shades of brown. That's funny. Bam, forgive them. They are trying to educate us. Gary, I got my DNA 50 generational. There's a company that does it. I am Jewish and Nigerian. I don't know what's going on with that. What does your gene... And look, Gary keeps asking these people, what does your genealogy say? And throws his hands up. He doesn't know that you gotta have... Your genealogy tells one story. You have to have documentation to tell that story, to corroborate with whatever your mother or your grandmother or your aunts and uncles ever said. You can't get the documentation because they ain't got it. The best thing they got is what they said. Then you turn around, your genealogy, the story can't tell your biological makeup. I need you to understand, you are an human being. You inherited 23 chromosomes from both parents. Those chromosomes tell a story. That story shows what is innately in you. So you're going to tell me that what is innately in you that you inherited from both your parents, a story supersedes it? No, fool. We're having a biological discussion. In a biological discussion, You need genetic testing. This continues to go on and on and on. I'm not going to hang my hat on just the one comment, but I'm showing the reason why I highlighted those first 3 comments were those comments that I showed. All right, so let's go. This lady says she's a descendant of Seminole Creek Indians. Thank you for sharing our history. Where's your Africanness? Because you're every bit of Africanness, and I call bullshit. I think I commented bullshit on this. I think I did. You're African with native admixture? Question mark. I never got an answer. I never got an answer. So let's continue on. There was a lot of support in the comments for this, but there was a lot of confusion by people. This makes sense why so many Black Americans between Georgia, Carolina, and Florida share indigenous ancestry. I'm one of them. Triggers. If your family was in Virginia prior to 1860, you have 50% chance of having native Black in your heritage. So am I. This is why I said the word Black is such a trigger word. My dad's side is from North and South Carolina. My grandmother mentioned this to us about our family tree as well. We are proudly Black, by the way, but history is history. I was born and raised in Florida with my parents and grandmother, so on and so forth. They go on and go on, native-like features, yada, yada, yada. This one goes. You're going to see the craziness show up. It shows up. I am one as well. This makes me so proud. Look, for our people fought and protected each other as always. None of these people will say anything about their Africanness, but a few. And I am one, and my children's grandmother is a Seminole. I'm from the Seneca tribe of Gad. What in the entire FDFs is this dude? You see what I'm saying? This is boy, but it's crazy. This makes sense if you have no sense. Everyone knows Indians are from India, so by calling yourself Indian means it's a made up shit. At least know your origin. How difficult is Blacks weren't not Indians? Say it loud while rubbing 2 brain cells together. Translate what you're trying to say, please. She wearing Charles out. Black folk weren't Indians. Revisionist history bullshit. Native Americans mixed with Africans and Europeans occurred after Columbus rediscovered America. Before that, there were zero, this is true, there was zero African and European ancestry among the natives. That is absolutely a fact. This user says, get a DNA test before you speak. I recommend this for everyone. We can't go off family lore. Most people who think they have Native American ancestry really don't. That's a fact. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute fact that we, us, Black people in the Americas, 2% of the population of Black, 44 million, 2% of the 44 million will have over 5% of Native, or 5% or more of Native American ancestry. 2% of 44 million. These are facts. But there was a lot, and I don't want to keep going because there's 3,000 comments. But there was a lot of anti-African mumbo jumbo in these chats. A lot of it. A lot. So much so that it's disheartening how these people can't stand proudly and say, African. I am of African and Native ancestry. You can't even say that, even if you lying and you don't even know. You can't even say that. You're just gonna say, no, I'm I'm black and I'm this. No, say it with your chest out. So somebody had made a claim, and I don't want to spend the time to go find it, that the story about the Underground Railroad to Mexico was bull jump. Ladies and gentlemen, this story was not bull jump. Most Americans know how the early 19th century Underground Railroad conveyed an estimated 100,000 enslaved people to freedom in northern United States and Canada. But few of the Southern Underground Railroad on which the enslaved walked freedom in Mexico. This escape route was essential to U.S. history. The threat of enslaved people escaping to Mexico destabilized slavery in Texas and Louisiana. Ran away from the undersigned, the Negro boy Charles, 5'3" high, gripped color, 24 years old. Also his wife Lucy, black age and about 34 years, haircut short. Formerly owned by Dr. Blackman Falls of the Brazos, Houston, Texas, May 10th, 1865. Baumgartner says one of the reasons the Southern route is less studied is that it didn't rely on abolitionist guides. I repeat, and I agree. I repeat, and I agree that one of the reasons the Southern route is less studied to the Yabros. Thank you. But to the Yabros, I applaud you. To the Yabros, this is the reason. Because abolitionist guides were not involved. There was so many abolitionists that the whole focus was on abolitionists, and all of them were residing ways to get us north. There wasn't an abolitionist movement in the South that led south. So these people that were writing history, right, have everything to do with that. Now, Mexican laborers working in Texas, Barma says, sometimes gave enslaved people direction and information about routes to Mexico. It was much less organized than what we usually think of, she concludes. Mexico promised freedom before U.S. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention, right, about the people. Y'all like to use oral history, right? A formerly enslaved person in Texas recalls his family's choice between going north or going south to find freedom. It's a story right here for it. This ain't the only story. They talked about 10,000 people who escaped and fled there. Straight up and down. The story of Felix Haywood. Get familiar. That's in the documentation now. There's another source that I want to play, but I want to come back to the video. For those of you, what's up? What's going on, everybody in the chat again? Give me 1 second. I need to do something real quick. So I want to take us to this one point in the video, and I'm gonna come back to it. So hold on 1 second. Let me take us there.
Child escaped from Carolina to Spanish St. Augustine and requested baptism into the true faith. Florida's governor sheltered the runaways out of Christian obligation and refused to return them when an agent from Carolina came to reclaim them. The Slaves' Telegraph quickly reported this outcome, and soon other runaways began arriving in St. Augustine. Florida officials repeatedly solicited Spain for guidance, and finally, on November 7th, 1693, Charles II issued a royal proclamation
giving liberty to all, the men as well as the women, so that by their example and by my liberty, others will do the same.
Mose was establish freedom seekers who were making their way down from the Carolinas, escaping slavery. If they made it down to Spanish Florida, they could live free.
And once they got there, they found that there were already people there who were living free. There were formerly enslaved Africans. There were free blacks who were living on the land.
At Nero's town on the Swanee River. Here on the Apalachicola River, even before the one here at Prospect Bluff, you had a settlement near Cheesy Bluff. They established a separate one where there were several hundred Maroon fighters. You had many settlements of free blacks all through Florida, particularly, late 1700s, early 1800s.
There were also Native Americans. At the same time that was happening, there was the group of Creeks who lived just north of Florida. And because of moral differences, they splintered into the Upper Creeks and Lower Creeks. And the Upper Creeks decided they wanted to break away and go down into Florida to get away from the Lower Creeks, who were taking on more European ways of life. And one of those was to begin chattel slavery. That's where the idea of the word Seminole comes from, is that some linguists believe that it is a Creek word or Muskogee word, and it's pronounced Seminole or Seminole. They believe it means run away, because these Creeks believe that part of their group was running away. And so it's also interesting that it fits for what would become the Black Seminoles, because they were essentially running away as well. They formed their own villages, but were interacting with the Seminoles, so they would become known as the Black Seminoles.
The African and indigenous people lived and worked closely together. And in time, they came to view themselves as a part of the same loosely organized tribe, cultivating a mutual respect of each other's cultures. The Africans adopted a lot of the Indian garb, and the Indians adopted African agriculture, music, and folklore. And they lived this way for over 100 years, raising generations of children in freedom. As Florida continued to be a haven for Black freedom, this didn't set too well with antebellum Georgia. They shared a border, and contentions were high. At this point, there was a lot of retaliation going on. The U.S. military launched raids, tried to steal slaves, steal cattle, and encroach on this Spanish land.
The United States felt that the existence of this community served as something of a beacon of freedom for slaves from Georgia and the Carolinas, or even the Creek Nation, to slip away from bondage and come down here seeking freedom in Florida.
In the spring of 1818, U.S. launched their attack.
As soon as the U.S. military was dispatched at the orders of Andrew $20 Jackson, this marked the beginning of the First Seminole War.
The 1818 battle at Swanee is again recorded by the U.S. military. The people referred to as Black warriors held off the U.S. troops.
The Seminoles, known as the Six in that area, and the Black Seminoles held their ground and held up their contract with the Spanish to...
All right, so my bad, I let it play a little bit more. That's because I was having a column brother. But this war about holding your ground. So I did this presentation before on the Mose, and that presentation talked about how people fled from the lower country, South Carolinas and Georgias, into Florida, and they took up refuge and built their own communities, created their own dialects, and communicated with each other. They named some things that were close to them from back in Africa, like Angola, that was used plenty of times down there way before, Fort Negro and all of that comes into pieces, that these people were living like that, and they were living in a separate community from the Indians in Florida. But when a war would break out, they would defend alongside the natives. They would come together and fight those wars and then go back peacefully, do what needed to be done. But it was a protection thing that lasted for a little while. And then you have the rest of the story told. So what I want to take you to is the cultural exchange defining the Native American and the slave and African slaves. So I'm on page 120, but I want to show everybody the title of the source first, and then I'm gonna come to page 120. I told y'all I got a lot of information. So it's the cultural exchange defined the Native American and African slave interaction at Rich Neck Plantation. So we're at a specific plantation, and we're gonna deal with some evidence. Now, this entitled article argues with evidence, and it's beautifully written. It's just gonna take up a lot of your time. It's gonna take maybe a day or two for some of y'all, maybe 3, maybe a week to read this, or maybe 2 weeks, depending on how you read. If you're a 30-page a day type of person, you can walk it down. However, in chapter 7, the discussion and conclusion, it says this: 17th century colonial Virginia was a chaotic time, to say the least, marked by famine, disease, change in leadership, and conflict between native and colonial settlers. In the end, after constant power struggle, the native population was pushed out as settlers, expanded into more native territories. The relationship between Native Americans and Anglo settlers was strained at best. The law of 1670, however, stated that Native Americans could not be enslaved. At the end of the 17th century, there was an increase of captive enslaved Africans being brought into Virginia as workforce that could be exploited for profit. The ceramic assemblage of Rich Neck in the 17th century depended less on refined earthenwares and more on coarse earthenwares. Colonial ware makes up 2% of the assemblage. This low frequency is not surprising because enslaved people might have been mostly African males. Rich Neck Plantation is on the James River, gave it more protection than plantations on the hinterlands of Jamestown. A key example of chaotic times was Bacon's Rebellion. In comparison with Rich Neck's was safer. One of the many reasons the Bacon Rebellion was the unfair balance of power and representation that the ruling Virginia class was establishing at the time. Now, by this time, native populace had been pushed farther away than in earlier years. The archaeology tells us that 2% of the assemblage is colonial. During this time, given the historical context, it was no surprise that such a number was low. Made ceramics and high numbers in imports would be the case. Native English relations at that point had reached all-time low. The Powhatan War, that word comes up. It's also an important historical event during this period. The archaeology shows that from the material culture and the final analysis, Rich Neck was in its early stage of development. Self-sufficient in the terms of food and resources was being established. The archaeology does not exclude the presence of enslaved Native Americans, but it would suggest that Africans made most of the workforce there. What up, Lucky? Early 18th century. By the beginning of the 18th century, the political, social, and economic landscape of colonial Virginia started to solidify. The power struggle that played most of the 17th century between the Powhatan and the English was over. In this new world, rich white landowners were on the top of the social economic ladder. What we know the 17th century, Rich Neck is of Thomas Ludwell period. The 18th century slave quarters, and where there was a drastic change in the ceramic assemblage. My key point in all of this being brought up here is there was a clear distinction between Native Americans and the African slaves that continued no matter if there was a Bacon's Rebellion, if there was any kind of rebellion, they all knew the difference between an African and a Native American. They knew how we got here. They had nothing to hide or lie about. But the more you read into this, the more you understand that the evidence just simply outweighs the perspective of what people think they are. You want to claim native ancestry? These tribes are not recognizing you. How do you go get recognized? You go do a blood quantum, they're going to tell you that you still don't qualify to be among them. They're not going to have you. You would be a fool to sit here and assume such. Your biological makeup is the best evidence you have of proving who you are and what you are made of. We all know that the Native Americans were enslaved. That ain't even an argument there. That was before we even had to get here. So you need to know about the not only the shared slavery between the Africans and the natives that transpired, and that's where intermarriage took place among some of them, but the illegitimate facts of a slave, of being enslaved by those Cherokees, Choctaws, Chickasaws, Creeks, and Seminoles. We were enslaved by Native Americans as well. Our children were enslaved. Period. Native Americans participated in that. But even in that, some who admixed, we got some great minds to come up out of that. One, Spence Johnson, who tells a story about the experience. Right? We got people like Paul Cuffey, right? George Bonga, right? Paul Cuffey and George and Bonga, two beautiful stories, but they never relinquished their Africanness. None of those people who admixed with natives during that time and coming all the way up until 2016 or 17 never relinquished their Africanness. So let's just move the needle a little bit more and let's get into it. So Native Americans who owned slaves. Europeans introduced the 5 civilized tribes of the Southeast to the institution of racial slavery, and during the Civil War, the 5 civilized tribes fought on both the Union and Confederate. This often overlooked part of American history takes on significant light in today's debates over slavery, reparations, and monuments to those who owned slaves or fought to keep them. So in this article speaks to the 5 civilized tribes, which is one of the reasons most of us state the identity of being classified as being Native Americans or having Indian families. I'm not going to read it all to you, but I'm just telling you, while I'm talking, I'm giving you a source of reference of information that I'm actually speaking to, so you can understand that in the description of this video, I have that. For those that know me, know that I'm going to leave sources. The ones that I couldn't leave is because I didn't have room, which is stuff like this, because I want to transcend this conversation because there was a skin color reference that was made in the comments, and that's a huge problem among us when we're having this historical, when we're trying to put something into historical context. So, written by the BBC, it says, How to Argue with a Racist, 5 Myths Debunked. Myth number 1, the DNA of white and black people is completely different. The primary pigment in human skin is melanin. It is used to protect us from the sun. It absorbs the sun's ultraviolet rays before they can destroy foliate, one of the body's key vitamins. Many genes are involved in the biochemical pathways that resulted in melanin production. Natural variation within these genes is the root cause of the spectrum of skin tones that humans have. So the biggest genetic difference between the human race is between white people and black people, right? Wrong? Firstly, all humans share almost all the same DNA, a fact that betrays all of our recent origins from Africa. Secondly, there is more genetic diversity on the continent of Africa than in the rest of the world put together. 2 people from different tribes in southern Africa would be more genetically different from each other than Sri Lankans, Maori, and the Russians. We might categorize people as white, black, or brown, but these visual variations don't accurately reflect the genetic differences or rather similarities between us. So when they're sitting here saying that all melanated people populated the earth, yada, 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 bull crap. When we're doing that, You're playing in the game of pseudoscience. I've been saying this all day. It's a running theme for today. When having a conversation with these dudes that ain't got evidence for nothing. They want to sit here and show us pictures and images of blackamoors that are referring to sub-Saharan Africans that they leave out of the history books of why they're showing you this. You have to look at their biological makeup, period. So it continues on. Myth number 2, there's a such thing as racial purity. Think of certain areas, lands, or peoples as being isolated, either physically or culturally, and these boundaries are insurmountable. But this is neither what history nor genetics tell us. In fact, no nation is static. People have moved around the world throughout history and had sex whenever and wherever they could. Sometimes these are big moves in short times. Most often, people are largely static over a few generations, and that can feel like a geographical and cultural anchor. Nevertheless, every Nazi or Jewish ancestor, every white supremacist has Middle Eastern ancestry, every racist has African, Indian, East Asian ancestors, as well as everyone else. Racial purity is pure fantasy. For humans, there are no purebloods, only mongrels enriched by the blood of multitudes. Myth 3, Germany for Germans, Turkey for the Turks. You know the rest. Some people experience a lot of angst about migrants and refugees coming to their country, a phenomenon that has been experienced in many places around the world lately. Among recent examples, the shooting rampage last month that started in Shishibar, New Germany, was motivated by a bar fight, a far-right doctrine to expel or murder immigrants. Those on the far right have long expressed anger in some of the epithets. Germany for Germans, France for French, Turks for Turkish, Italy for Italians, have all been used as anti-immigration phrases by far-right groups. Go back to where you came from. Y'all remember hearing that shit? They told us that all through school. Excuse my French. They told us that as Black people all throughout school, still to this day, go back to where you come from. The British Isles, for instance, has become home to migrants since they separated from the continent around 7,500 years ago. Before the French took over 1066, that part of the world had been invaded by Vikings, Angles, Saxons, Huns, and dozens of other smaller tribes and clans. And even before that, the Romans ruled, which in their turn came from all over the Intercontinental Empire, which reached as far as sub-Saharan Africa and the Middle East. I'm gonna skip ahead. A genealogy test, someone is 100% white. Genealogy. Genealogy and ancestry fascinate us, and racists in particular. Websites like Stormfront are frequent by white nationalists, white supremacists, and anti-Semitic members who forward theories of Holocaust denial and obsessed with the population genetics. They use mainstream genealogy tests like those offered by Ancestry DNA to prove they are 100% white or non or Jewish. However, the logic is flawed. DNA can tell you some interesting things about your family history, and it is very useful for identifying close family like siblings and biological parents, but its powers are profoundly limited by fundamental biology. Over time, descendants start to shed the DNA of their actual ancestors, and the amount of the vanished builds up over generations to be huge. You can carry DNA from only half of your ancestors dating 11 generations back. That is why you don't have the full scale. So it is possible you are genetically unrelated to people you are actually descended from as recent as the 18th century. This is why our story is so beautiful, because we can take the genealogical side and the genetic genetic side and marry them, going beyond the 18th, because our story has been documented with historical records. We know this. When they say you can't tell us when you came off a slave boat, hey, who was writing in the 15th and the 16th century on our behalf to let us know? Oh, the people who were documenting the amount of bodies that was on these ships. which were limited to what? Most of them didn't even have some of the people's names, full names. They might have had a name. Sarah from the Gambia, John from the Congo, 5'3", 20 years of age or some shit like that. They didn't do a job of explaining exactly who was on there. These people didn't even have last names. These people were given names as they were Christianized and put on the goddamn boat. Black people are better at running than white people. These are the myths. I'm not even gonna get into this one because everybody think that black people just ultra fast. But I'm gonna move ahead. I'm dealing with skin tone at this point. Yeah, we were merchandise. Yeah, he is. I made a stupid comment. That was stupid. Yeah, that's crazy. So the primary biological role of human skin pigmentation is a mediator of penetration of ultraviolet radiation. You need to understand it, UVR, into the deep layers of the skin and continuous circulation. Since the origin of Homo sapiens, dark protective constitutive pigmentation and strong tanning abilities have been favored under conditions of high UVR and represent the baseline condition of modern humans. The evolution of partly depigmented skin and variable tanning abilities has occurred multiple times in prehistory as populations has dispersed into the environments with lower and more seasonal UVR regimes with unique complements of genes and cultural practices. The evolution of extremes of dark pigmentation and depigmentation has been rare and occurred only under conditions of extremely high or low environmental UVR, promoted by positive selection of variant pigmentation genes followed by limited gene flow. Over time, the evolution of human skin pigmentation has been influenced by the nature and course of human dispersal and modifications of cultural practices, which have modified the nature of skin pigmentation genes throughout most of prehistory and history. The evolution of human skin pigmentation has been a contingent and non-deterministic process. Ladies and gentlemen, in short, the UV rays is a great example of what we intake from the sun. Some of us are so far away from the equator. Some of us are close to the equator. Some of us goes below the equator. We're going to see an amalgamation of different type of variations of skin protection according to our geographical location. So when I say all skin folk and kinfolk, that is one piece of evidence. The second piece of evidence is your biological makeup, what you inherited from your mother and your father, their parents and their parents' parents and their parents' parents' parents, that tell us a more depicted story of who we are genetically as a human being. Just because you light skinned and I'm light skinned ain't the entirety of our struggle. There are other genetic features that people possess that differentiate them. I told you that the South Americans, Central Americans, and the Americans all descended from a single ancestor somewhere in Southeast Asia, who migrated out and made it with someone else, and then there was a split that occurred. When that split occurred, one went to South America, the other went to North America and came in through the Beringer or among the Celtic Highway. We said this. There was a canoe that was found down in South America. Lo and behold, ladies and gentlemen, I sent out a coincidence, a source the other day. Let me hit up Nada C. Let me look at my chat with Nada C real quick, just so I can tell you. I sent this to him Saturday. Native American dugout canoes, thousands of years old, preserved. I'm not going to tell you where it's preserved because I know that they're listening. The simple fact that this canoe is still being made by those people with native ancestry today is crazy. They said it's about 8,000 years old, but it's not. I think they have 8,000 years of history of this of making these type of canoes. However, this dugout canoe is 600 years old, and it's in the process of being preserved as they have it sitting in some type of salient water. I'll come back to that. These natives are still making it today. They're still making them today. I want to continue forward. If I'm going back to this skin tone shit, I gotta beat this up. So, melanin, Afrocentricity, and pseudoscience. This is the Yearbook of Physical Anthropology. This was in '93. This is an old article, and I'm showing you that this shit's been going on for quite some time. We made a mistake of doing what the Europeans were doing. We did. We had some of our smartest elders in our community at certain times do this. A component of Afrocentric movement has incorporated a theory that Black people, including ancient Egyptians, have superior mental, physical, and paranormal powers because they have more melanin, both in their skin and in their brains. Pause. One of the people that think like this is AP and A1 and Top Cats. Dane don't think like this. He don't get into the whole melanin conversation. He's a revisionist wholeheartedly. He just tries to change the narrative of every historical document that exists. But these dudes think that being Black denotes some superpower. Y'all heard the show earlier. Catch was on some bogus stuff. Absolutely, I ballot. AP, A1, none of them own only the knowledge, none of them cosmic, none of them don't know how to make none of that, but they claim the identity of the people do. But I'm not going to get too far into this article. I just want to let you know it is available for you to read if you're interested in hearing this argument from back then. It has updated, and that's why I'm not hinging on that. I do want to just mention a little bit of this. All right. The pseudoscience of race and ethnicity. Some lessons and perspectives when talking about race, racism, and racial justice. This is unique. Why is it unique? Because race is not something one inherits, but rather it has become an identity marker that others have pinned onto one another and also at the individual level received to be true, to be a valid categorization of humankind. Racism then is not only a form of discrimination against a certain race, but it can be able to direct the entirety of one's lived experience. Race is valued in that it has historically been able to assist those in power in effectively separating entire groups of people to fall under the same one generalized category. Race groups are those with a shared ethnic origin and cultural background and are recognized by some shared physical and genetic traits such as skin color, skull size, eye shape, height, and other characteristics. Stereotypes have further allowed for character labels making physical attributes become indicators of a person's supposed racial background and makeup. This has then forced individuals to submit to the standard and act to be alike to their own and different from everyone else. People do this involuntarily or voluntarily in order to fit a certain racial category or to be different from those of the same race and become accepted into certain racially dominated social circles. It is important to note that one's race is not contingent on one's genetic makeup. I'm going to say that again. To the people in the far back, it is important to note that one's race is not contingent on one's genetic makeup. When I sat on a panel with those idiots and I told them that all skin folk ain't kinfolk, they shunned me. They had an entire problem with what I said. The whole melanated argument is pseudoscience. The whole, there's black people in Australia, pseudo. Okay, there's black people there. Do you know why the people in Australia have black skin? Among those Europeans that come from somewhere else that are now considered Australians themselves, do you know why the skin of those people that inhabited that land first is dark skin? It wasn't because they migrated out of Africa. It is because they always been near the equator. They needed some type of protection against the damn sun. But if you go look at their genetic makeup, it is totally different from the color of their skin. These people are heavily admixed. And I said this before, and I keep saying this because science wins again. With Neanderthal, European, African, Denovisan admixture within them. And they close to the equator. An amalgamation of a migration pattern that came into the particular area that they're in required what they needed for survival. Just like when people, I'm gonna take me as an example. I'm gonna be outside all summer. My skin gonna go from light skin to brown skin to almost dark skin, depending on how much sunlight I take in during the summer. The moment that I leave that place and I come back to where I am, and it is not the summertime no more, it is the winter time and there's less sun and my body ain't taking that much more sun, I'm gonna go right back to being yellow, high yellow, light skin. But imagine if I sat there and I took on that sun every day of my life. My skin ain't fading or going no other way. I'm gonna keep on building up the protection to fight against the sun. One's race is not contingent of one's genetic makeup. There is no specific gene or scientific background for race. That is correct. Lucky says they are the furthest from us genetically. What you mean race or culture, Juju? Them Australoids ain't us culturally. Them Australoids ain't us genetically. They're not. The people in Australia, them indigenous people, them aboriginals down there, they ain't nothing like us. They ain't. So this article goes there, takes it there. Characterizations racisms further when one views that a stereotype of their race would not be advantageous for them to possess. This encourages them to believe that they have to change their aspect onto themselves in order to be not viewed negatively and prevent losing the value of their individual selves to their superiors. The formation of racial identities then has become integral to the perceived social understanding that people have formed of themselves, one another. With this concept of race has ultimately positioned racial groups in a hierarchical order in the political, cultural, economic, and social settings of our world. It's bullshit. So, who are the people of the Americas? Who the hell is these people? An analysis of human Y chromosome haplogroup Q characterizes ancient population movements in Eurasia and the Americas. Abstractly speaking, since some people can't understand the full legality of an article, Recent genome studies of modern and ancient samples have proposed that Native Americans derive from a subset of Eurasian gene pool carried to America by an ancestral Beringian population, from which two well-differentiated components originated and subsequently mixed in different proportion during their spread into the Americas. To assess the timing, places of origin, and extent of admixture between these components, they performed an analysis of Y chromosome haplogroup Q, which is the only Pan-American haplogroup and accounts for virtually all Native American Y chromosomes in Meso and South America. Ladies and gentlemen, the only Pan-American haplogroup is Q. And it accounts for all Native American Y chromosomes in Meso and South America. Who taking the DNA test? Where the Wabos at? Where the Wabos? The conclusion states, we established and dated a detailed haplogroup Q phylogeny that provides new insight into geographic distributions of Eurasian and American branches in modern and ancient samples. They did not play games. They did not play games. They said, we finna get all of this to the all of this. Done. Next up, mitochondrial DNA diversity in indigenous populations of the southern extent of Siberia and the origins of Native American haplogroups. So real briefly, I'm gonna take you to this highlighted part. Early studies of Native American mtDNA variations have shown that all Native American mtDNA belongs to haplogroups A, B, C, D, and X. Why do you think that they don't want to take a DNA test? Because they're not going to have A, B, C, D, and X. They're simply not. If they do possess A, B, C, D, and X, I got some Neanderthal and some Denovisan in their gene flow and their admixture. Oh, they're gonna get real, it's gonna get real interesting for them then. Explain that away. And then learn about how Homo sapiens lost their tails from the great apes. Now, ancient DNA. Let me bring y'all up to par. I took y'all, if you didn't pay attention, these dates are going up in the studies, okay? So ancient DNA confirms Native Americans' deep roots in North and South America. Trove of ancient samples reveals 11,000 years of unknown genetic history. Article published in 2018 was the starting point of finding out more, not more, but other information that went on with the previous years that kept building a case for who populated the Americas first. For decades, scientists could describe the peoples of the Americas only in broad strokes, leaving plenty of mysteries about when and how people spread across the continents. Now, state-of-the-art ancient DNA methods applied to scores of new samples from around the Americas are filling in the pictures. Two independent studies. This is the beauty of it all. We ain't gotta say, oh, that's biased. Oh, that's pseudo. Oh, it's this or that. No. Two independent, meaning they had no affiliation with either side of the argument. They ain't even in it. They like, we're gonna do our own research. We ain't affiliated with the natives. We ain't affiliated with the Europeans. We coming straight down the pipe. If the legs spread, we're going straight for the middle. What did they find out? Published in the Cell and Online Science find that ancient populations expanded rapidly across the Americas about 13,000 years ago. They also emphasize that the story continued in thousands of years since, revealing previously undocumented large-scale movements between North and South America. The data included 64 newly sequenced ancient DNA samples from Alaska to Patagonia, span more than 10,000 years of genetic history. The numbers of samples are just extraordinary, Ben Trotter says, an archaeologist at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Prior to the studies, only 6 genomes older than 6,000 years from the Americas had been sequenced. As a result, Jennifer Raff, I done brought her up many times to y'all. She's an anthropological geneticist at the University of Kansas in Lawrence, says, the models that we've been using to explain the peoples of the Americas have always been oversimplified. Willis Sleeve, an evolutionary geneticist at the University of Copenhagen who led the science team, worked closely with the Falian Payot Shoshan tribe in Nevada. The Shoshan, or is that an E, or is it Shawnee tribe in Nevada? We'll get it right. To gain access to some of the new samples, the tribe had been fighting to repatriate 10,700-year-old remains found in Nevada Spirit Cave and had resisted destructive genetic testing. So remember, they asked to do the genetic testing. The people denied the genetic testing. So the government would not allow them to move the bodies. They had to agree and grant permission. They needed to agree to get granted permission, and things work themselves out. This is why we know the story of the Spirit Cave and them children that were there, and how the whole genome ended up getting sequenced. I ain't gonna go there because I'm building on my argument here. This is why we don't run from DNA. It tells more of the story. Ancient DNA, I'm bringing you to 2023. Ancient DNA charts Native Americans' journey to Asia thousands of years ago. Analysis of 10-year-raising individuals up to 7,500 years old gives a new picture of movement across the continents. They have bones, ladies and gentlemen. A grave with bones were analyzed. What was found in those bones? By walking the land bridge or traveling by boat, hunter-gatherers ventured out from eastern Eurasia some 20 to 30,000 years to become the first Americans. The first Americans. Now, new genetic research is mapping out those ancient migrations back and forth across the Bering Strait and elsewhere across Eurasia during the key periods of human prehistory. Scientists have recently recovered from DNA from well-preserved bones and teeth of 10 Eastern Eurasian individuals, 7,500 to 500 years old, and they published their findings on Thursday in Current Biology. So you can get the source here and check it out if you know how to read scientific jargon. I'm just here to make you get some real resources. Now, this article, ladies and gentlemen, was published earlier in January. So I had to bring you to November the same year and say DNA shows Native Americans have origin in Western Eurasia. So I had to up the ante on the information from you and bring you something a little bit more cohesive. This is published in the Journal of Nature, meaning the earlier research has been substantiated, and now we can be more clearer on who the first people who came to the Americas were and how they should be identified from us and our understanding who, when, what, where, and how. So these Black people, denoting of African ancestry and denial of African ancestry, that look like me and you, not Thomas in the chat, look like me and you, the people on these pretendian streets, these pretendian YouTube streets, who keep staking claim to being indigenous to the Americas, Well, then your DNA would represent the haplogroups that were mentioned earlier. But they don't do that. Why? Because you said that it's fake, that it can't put you in a landmass. But then you had someone on your channel pull up a source, and we read the source with that person. And in that conversation, it said it could tell you from the area in which you come from, but it does not explain of the group of people in which is involved in that area. It's what they did about the Viking stuff, remember? That same source that they try to use. You use it against them and debunk them, we move on. So we know who the first people that populated the Americas is. So my question is, to everyone that looks like us, to claims to be indigenous to the Americas, or a native, or an Indian, or an Aboriginal, or indigenous, what does your biological makeup say? And the only way you're going to know what it says is by getting a DNA test and seeing what your true story is. Put your full pictures together. Using material from a boy's arm bone, the DNA research could be basis of a new understanding of how America's indigenous peoples came to be. The study authors say that their work could help clear up some long-standing mysteries regarding the ancestors of Native Americans, whose genomes include some genetic singularities. Co-authored in ancient DNA specialist Eske Willersleeve of the United of Copenhagen states, these results were a great surprise to them. I hadn't expected anything like this. A genome related to present-day Western Eurasian populations and modern Native Americans, as well as really puzzling in the beginning. How could this happen? Incredibly, the bone material from the boy provided what researchers believe is the oldest genome of modern humans to ever be sequenced. His DNA contains genes that are found today in Western Eurasia, who live in the Middle East and Europe, as well as in Native Americans. Most surprisingly, however, it shows no evidence of any relation to East Asians who are living now. The scientists had enough genetic material dating back to 17,000 years ago to create an entire second individual genome that also revealed a similar genetic structure to that of the boy. I guess this, my friends, is who Ad Power and A1, Dane Calloway, Top Cats, and all Phoenix Moon, Sister Bethy, all of them supposed to look like. And they don't. They don't. Everything that we talked about from the last glacial period on forward is how you make this stuff goes. So we're going to take a little commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to open the panel. And we're going to get to it because it's the turn up time. And I appreciate everyone for tuning into the first half of the show. Now let's get to the drama.
Street Sutek tried to line it up, and he was like, I don't debate y'all. Y'all too disrespectful. Aboriginal power won't even debate Sean because he's too disrespectful.
He is though. No, he really is though. I can't really like you, bro. You cool. Not a coincidence. I actually chop it up with but niggas that come off too heated and disrespectful, like I said, I'll debate you, bro. But we gotta get in the ring first. If you want to be disrespectful like that, at least disrespect me in the ring, bro.
Oh, God, bro.
Let's talk now, bro. Can you disrespect me in a cage, bro? Like, I'd rather just do that. Then we go straight from the cage. I mean, put your ice on the way to the motherfucking computer, and we'll debate directly after that, nigga. Shit.
That's why I don't even do. Fucking with the nigga and shit. You feel me? Like, it's like, wait, bro, talk like that, man. We gotta get face to face with you to talk to you like that, my nigga.
Yeah, Peanut. You good? Go ahead, I got my brother over here. Peanut, what's the word, my brother? What's the champ?
Yeah, I appreciate you, man, but
lucky. Let me say this, man. First of all, I'm an older brother. I'm young in spirit because I stay in shape. But I'm older. I deserve respect. Don't lie on me. You're not going to get nowhere lying because that's what's going to make you fall face first. Second of all, I'm well known in the Pan-African community. I'm not nobody new. You're younger than me. You don't know this. I didn't put in work and expose Rob Bourne, Sue Tech, any of them people over there. They know it deep down inside. And I'm going to be long-winded. I'm a Moorish American. I already had back and forth with them dudes. They erased videos. I'm not running from anybody. Don't ever say that stupid shit again. Third, and last but not least, I'm not losing no debate to no Pan-African, so don't ever say that shit again, famo. And that's it. Appreciate y'all, man.
You heard that? If Sean P want to debate, tell him to debate the champ over there, right?
Sue Tech want to debate. So this like it's a pecking order. It's a pecking. So Sean want you, and Sue Tech want him. He say PMF ain't on his
No problem. There's no problem, man. Let's set up a Sue Tech debate, man. I don't like him anyway.
Okay, so I love that one, brother. I love that warrior mentality.
That's how it's going. I love to tell Sue Tech, tell me. There ain't nothing. My champ always in the chat. Album pop in, we'll set a topic, we'll set a date, and we'll make it pay-per-view. We'll chop it up behind the scenes, I get their contact, we'll make it work. So, you heard it right here. He ain't ducking no phase, bro.
But that's what I'm saying. He put this over here on y'all channel, and then when we get in other
Hey, alright, I will block your ass, nigga, because I'm well known for disrupting them chats over there. Nigga, stop fucking lying, nigga. You a goofy, nigga. I would never let a lame ass nigga around me in my face, clown.
You gonna block me?
It ain't no time I ain't ever been on the Pan-African channel and made my impact. Stop lying. I'm a real man, bro. Stop lying, fam. Don't do PNF like that.
PNF, he trying to trigger you, brother.
Word the fuck up.
But listen, he did that to me, talking about, oh, word on the street, I'm ducking from John P. I've never even had but one conversation with this little disrespectful motherfucker.
Oh, okay, yeah, he a little hot. He like that.
So he like...
Can them boys show us what their identification say? What your license say? What your ID say? What your passport say? You claim to be a Moor, Indigenous, Aboriginal, Native American. What does your information say? We're looking for that. We need that information, and we need it now. So when I left earlier and went to eat, I was dealing with them fools over there in that particular source regarding those images. So I want to take y'all on a journey, right, to the Blackamoor. We're going to deal with the Blackamoor just a little more, just a little more. So let me get it on the screen. And then we'll go from there. Now, I can't put everything in the description of the video. So what I am going to do is I'm gonna make a post on the community page. The post that I make on the community page is going to be of the show. It's going to be just the show notes. So for anyone interested in all the information that has been displayed during this show, it's going to be on a post, and it's going to have today's show notes for everyone involved. So with that being said, we can get on into this. Now I dropped a link. All them dudes that kept timing me out, blocking my pages, muting me, putting me in back chat, putting me in the back. All them dudes that had so much to say, y'all all been tagged to this video, and y'all are all running. And when I brought up the Blackamore stuff, you see how A was at, and even the other dude that hopped on the panel was like, you know, bringing up, listen, I don't trust AP. Why I'm gonna get him $500? That's why I said I sent to Lucky, because I know that I can get my $500 back from Lucky, because he got the five. He got his own money. He don't need my money. He got his own money. So I had no problem sending him the $500 because I knew what kind of games that A1 was on. But he has to look a certain way to them people in the chat. So Blackamore. Moore and Blackamore are two English words that were highly influenced by Iberian and Italian designations of Northern African people. Moro, Portuguese, Moro, Castilian, Italian, derived from the Latin Morus, an inhabitant of Mauritania, the Roman designation of the region of Maghreb. The lengthy duration of the Iberian Reconquista, the reconquest of Muslim territories by the local Christian kingdoms, and the increasing commercial exchanges between, hold on, y'all know J Store, he be acting funny. So you gotta give it a minute. But increasing commercial exchange between Christians and Iberian and Northern Europe contributed to the dissemination of the world in the Middle Ages, where Moor remained a popular descriptor for the medieval Berber and Arab Muslim conquerors of the Iberian Peninsula and Sicily. The accounts of the late medieval Portuguese travelers, explorers, and merchants often used Moor for Muslim, although distinctions remained despite such terms as Arabian Moors or Turkish Moors. Give me 1 second. Let me make sure y'all can, I see that y'all can hear. Hold on, just one momento. I need to clear something real quick. Hold on, y'all. My screen black? Or can y'all still see my screen? Hold up. It's black now. Okay. What about now? We back, right? Okay. So again, the lengthy duration of the Iberian reconquest, the conquest of Muslim territories by local Christian kingdoms, and the increasing commercial exchanges between Christian Iberia and Northern Europe contributed to the dissemination of the word in the Middle Ages, where Moor remained a popular descriptor for the medieval Berber and Arab Muslim conquerors of the Iberian Peninsula and Sicily. The accounts of the late medieval Portuguese travelers, explorers, merchants, and often used Moor for Muslim, although distinctions remain despite such terms as Arabian Moors or Turkish Moors. Both were usually described as Moros, Brancos, white Moors, while Berber and sub-Saharan Muslims were frequently distinguished between Moros de Terra or Moros Negro. Now, ladies and gentlemen, do y'all remember this book that the abos love to bring up when they want to try to flip the script on us? Anybody remember the book? Anybody remember the book? I'm gonna bring it up first. Give me 1 second. I am changing my little screen now so that I can access my books, because I want to bring the book up. Look at Tarka. We know you don't know, bro. We know you don't know, bro. I'm just messing with you. Okay, so what's somebody in the chat, melanated guy, you gotta know. Come on, man. Y'all been listening to me for so long. Y'all gotta know the book. What is the one book that the abos love to bring up when they talk about people being in Africa? I mean, in the America. All right, okay. Y'all take it too long. Jack D. Forbes books, Africans and Native Americans by Jack D. Forbes. No, girl, no came before no Columbus. All right, so for those of you who don't know, this is the book. Africans and Native Americans. My bad. Oops. Africans and Native Americans, Language of Race and the Evolution of Red Black Peoples. Jack D. Forbes. Yes, he disagrees with him, 93. He don't never make no argument, but I need to show it on the screen. So now that I brought that out to y'all, we'll keep Jack D. Forbes on the side and we'll come back over here. So the word Moor was for Muslim, according to the Portuguese. But as far as other people, right, it could mean Arabian Moors or Turkish Moors or both. But they called the white Moors Moros Brancos, while the Berber and sub-Saharan Muslims were called Moros de Terra and Moros Negros. Now, I brought up Jack D. Forbes' book because in that same book by Jack D. Forbes, Negros de Terra shows up. Y'all don't remember that? They make a clear distinction between the Negroes in West Africa and the Negroes that they were referring to in the Caribbean area, or let's just say the New World. We know this because when they were arguing with us, we read the whole dang on book. And if your boy, what's his name? the one who be flipping sides all the time. Real Rap. If Real Rap was here, he would tell you that we read similar words regarding that, and I do believe it was in the descriptions that were given when they were doing Negros de Terra and Negros that they were referring to, but that's in Jack D. Forbes' book. Anyway, whew. Moro and Moro also became associated with specific physical features, as the Portuguese and Spanish term Moreno, literally brunette or swarthy, suggests. Morisco, the Iberian category used to identify Christian converts from Islam, was another derivative from Moro, which sought to stigmatize the racialized and the Arab and Berber descended from the Muslim communities of Al-Andalus. The complex relation between ethnicity, geography, and religion informed the evolution of Blackamoor, often used alongside region-inflected words like Niger or Ethiop. English grammars and dictionaries of the time made similar associations of Blackamoor or an Ethiop, the Negros, which we call the Blackamoors. Are y'all catching what is being thrown at you? Iberian categories such as Morisco contributed by the English ideas about Moors and Blackamoors. Accounts in Purchas his pilgrim labeled Arabic at the Morisco tongue. The original meaning of Morisco, however, related to Christian converts from Islam, particularly those descended from the Muslim communities of Al-Andalus. Morisco was the designation which stigmatized and racialized groups that, although mostly Christianized, remained religiously and politically suspicious to the Europeans due to their Arabic roots. Successive translations of Portuguese and Spanish works, such as Antonio Galvelo's Trado dos Descombrindo, Miguel Corventes Don Quixote, or Miguel de Ferro Success as Jews Portuguese, contributed to a wide dissemination of the word England while retaining the discriminatory meaning. Richard Percival's dictionary in Spanish and English described Morisco as a blackamoor made or become a Christian. Behind these categorizations lay the perception of the rampant miscegenation of Iberian metropolitan and colonial societies, which, in spite of the efforts made by Portuguese and Spanish authorities to enforce religious and ethnic uniformity separate from other European nations. So the label, blackamoor in England, put color at the heart of identity. In his 1600 translation of the North African humanist scholar Leo Africanus, big-headed behind, Descriptions of Africa, John Poiré describes the principal nations of Africa as the Africans or Moors, properly so called, which last are of two kinds, namely white or tawny Moors or Negroes or blackamoors. Tawny Moors were North African Muslims, such as the Moroccan ambassador Abd el-Ahid bin Massoud, who visited Elizabeth Court in 1600, where the Poiré mentioned his preface to description of Africa. Poirot defined the blackamoors as a large number of individuals who are thought to be descended from Shem, the curse of Noah, from Arabian and lineage of Sem, which afterwards passed into Africa. Moor could therefore stand on its own, delineating a number of tawny, dark-skinned peoples from the Mediterranean or Middle East, while containing slightly less derogatory meaning than when prefaced with the word black. In this way, Abraham Hartwell wrote, in a Reporte de Kingdom of Congo in 1597, the inhabitants of Congo are generally and for the most part black, and in India, almost white. That is to say, of the middle color between white and black, which the Spaniards call mulatto, brown, or dark tawny. Tawny Moors, in the words of Emily Bartels, appear as subjects. Those customs and beliefs are more knowable and whose civility is more sure. The darkest skinned Africans, by contrast, supposedly lived a brutish and savage life without any king or knowledge of husbandry, while full-fledged articulations of racial difference did not exist until the institutionalization of slavery in the 17th century. There were taxonomies in place from classical antiquity that qualified the nature of individuals based on physical characteristics. People are naturally subordinate to qualities of their country of birth, wrote the Greek astrologer and mathematician Ptolemy. One should not call, say, Ethiopian white or straight-haired, and the German of Gaul black skin and woolly haired, or the Greek savage soul and untutored of mind. While the classification acknowledged the humanity of Africans, the rise of Atlantic slavery in the mid to late 17th century drastically changed the perceptions of human difference. Walter Riley's assertion, the history of the world is remarkable, given the shift in perception that followed the Britain became a dominant player in the slave trade. If color made a different species, then were the Negroes, which we call the blackamoors. Non animalia rationalia, not men, but some kind of strange beast. The mofo called us beast. Blackamoors. Africa, Africans, and popular ideas of blackness played an important role in construction of differences in moral literature. The color black often represented melody, death, or wickedness. Witches and dark-skinned figures were associated with the devil, and didactic world of contraries and comparisons. Blackness stood in opposition to the purity of whiteness. Pause, my nigga. So the whole notion of this blackamoor or Moor is still designating Africans. But depending on which Africans you're referring to, you could be referring to the Tawny Moors, which some say are the Berbers, the North Africans. Because the blackamoors are of the sub-Saharan. The reason that I am saying the things that I am saying is because your boy A1 tried to play me today by showing pictures of blackamoors. These figurines that were created in England. Ladies and gentlemen, I told y'all earlier, go look it up. Look at the images of the blackamoor, and it shows very clearly everything that he put on the screen. They're all denoting some African person. You don't find that little clay pipe that he mentioned among the blackamoor set. All of this is about representation of Africanness. Period, point blank. So when I told him that there was no Aboriginals wearing gold, see, he thought I forgot. And his people clearly forgot. I told him that there was no Indians wearing gold, gold chains, gold rings, gold teeth, and things. He said, well, what is these? And he pulled up the blackamoors, which were depicting Africans. The conversation was over. He tried to denote the word Moor as imposing on their Americanness when that was furthest from the case. If you didn't hear the exchange, I'm giving you clarity as we speak. I will play it back for the people to hear. When I came in hot on the channel, I clearly made my case known that there were no Indians, there were no natives, there were no indigenous, there was no aboriginals wearing gold around their necks, in their teeth, around their wrists. That was an African thing. I made myself clear when I stated that. Who don't remember it? Don't worry. I'm here to not only make you think, but to help you learn. Mm-hmm. The reverse pseudo. Yeah. People still looking at this video too. Mm-hmm. So, I'm gonna share the screen. I need to see if y'all can hear it. I need to hear y'all can hear it. I come in hot. Can y'all hear it?
I'm keeping it 100. No, I'm just keeping it 100. Nigga might snatch it. Nigga might not even physically assault.
This ain't gonna be a homicide in this bitch.
Nigga might snatch it and look, nigga might snatch it and sprint up the street.
Hey, but Chicago.
Okay, so y'all can hear it, right? Everybody can hear the video. I paused it, but everybody can hear the video. Okay, cool. So now I want you to listen very closely to what I say when I open my microphone. I am not on the panel yet. I am on the panel now.
Oh man, hey, one at a time, man.
One at a time.
Of what
Don't do that, G. Come on.
You wanna know how I know?
Your ancestors, we ain't gonna find none of them with no gold slugs, bro. None of them.
Bro, is Duke Deuce not in Memphis right now with a mouthful of gold, nigga?
They ain't, yeah, I mean, that's it.
What you mean? What Duke Deuce say?
I knew he was gonna do that. I knew he was gonna go full.
How you knew a rapper was gonna do that, bro? Nigga got damn near half a pound. Them fucking Arabs in Chicago went down on the motherfucking jewelry prices because they know what first Chicago was going to New York to get their jewelry, probably in the deal too. You feel me? And since then, they done went down on the prices, bro. You feel me? Like some that might be like 7 bands in Chicago, you could go to New York and probably get it somewhere between like 25 and 4.
Yep.
You feel me? And homie, ain't no hit dog that holler. I just hate niggas that hear niggas talking about how they living and they sound jealous because they can't live it. Nigga, you sound like a fucking hater, nigga. Like real talk. Nigga, we drippy, nigga. You want to call it slave mentality? Hey, nigga, give me some cotton to pick, nigga. I'm dripping around this, nigga.
Look, let's keep it 100 though, right?
This is crazy.
Let's keep it 100. Real talk,
This is
right?
crazy.
Ain't nobody walking around with no gold or no fucking ounce of better around their neck.
Show me the Aboriginals that was wearing gold chains.
Nigga got damn near half a
Show me the
pound.
Abos. Show me the Abos that rock gold chains, gold.
Come to Florida, bro.
No. Lucky.
Come to
Lucky.
Florida, bro.
You want to see the
Bro,
Abos?
look, you don't act like we don't do chains, bro. Like I literally, I ain't got mine on today because I'm in the crib chilling. But bro, you don't need to go in the safe and grab a couple.
Bro, ain't no African wearing no gold, nigga. They in the goddamn dirt mounds trying to find this nigga, sell it to the white
Nobody
man.
over here
Nigga,
wearing no gold chains. Gold
Who
teeth.
the fuck you talking about? You tweeting. Sean P, you lying, bro. Stop. Bro, the whole Memphis got gold teeth, bro.
Hey,
come on, man. Nah, bro. You know Memphis got a mouthful of gold. Nigga, stop playing, bro. What about Duke Deuce? What about Duke Deuce? Come on, Sean P.
He trying to call some people of African descent indigenous. I hope that's not what he implying, because he said the people in Memphis got gold slugs. And I kept saying, there's no Aboriginals or indigenous people with gold slugs in their mouth or rock gold. I came in and I said that. So every last one of y'all heard me say that there's no Aboriginal or indigenous people that rock gold chains and have golds in their mouth. And Truth wanted to deal with today's black people, and he trying to make Duke Deuce a dumbass indigenous. But watch what the dummy down here in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen does.
He don't do that, G. Come
You go
on.
you
wanna know how I know?
Your ancestors, we ain't gonna find none of them with no gold slugs, bro. None of them.
Bro, is Duke Deuce not in Memphis right now with a mouthful
I
of
just sit here and said none of your ancestors were gold slugs, and he gonna tell me Duke Deuce. Is Duke Deuce an ancestor? Is Duke Deuce an ancestor? Is Duke Deuce an ancestor? Can somebody in the chat help me with that shit, please? I told y'all we have come within the ignorant hour. Is Duke Deuce an ancestor?
Go, nigga.
They ain't, you know what I mean? That's it.
What you mean? What Duke Deuce say?
I knew he was gonna do that. I knew he was gonna go full.
How you knew a rapper was gonna do that, bro?
Nah, I'm talking about sharing the screen right now. I know he was gonna go full pseudo. Now let's go see who this. Let's go see who
this pseudo.
Really is. Boom. So pause. I said don't have an African ancestor. I mean, not an African ancestor. You don't have an Aboriginal ancestor. You don't have an Aboriginal ancestor that wear gold slugs or gold around their neck. Mm. We just had some puppets, so I had to pause for a second. Blue try and a lilac try. Blue try and a lilac try. My bad, y'all. I'm finna get back to the bill. Lilac is a female, the blue is a male. I don't need the male, the female though. Both tails. All right.
This piece.
So this is pseudo. So this is pseudo.
Yes. He asked me if it was pseudo, and I said yes. Everybody that watched the live stream heard me say that this was pseudo, and he didn't.
Pseudo.
Yes.
Okay, so says who says it's pseudo?
Pull up the.
So what is this? So what is it? Imagine. So somebody imagined this image, right?
Pull up the.
Brother, I'm asking. Hold up. But
don't show me the image.
Wait a minute.
Give me the description.
No,
go back.
I got more.
Go back.
No.
So pause. So now it's gonna get muddy, and you're not gonna be able to hear me and him. And he continued, and you heard him say the word more. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna go back here. When I told you that there were no indigenous people wearing gold chains and had slugs in their mouth, he went and pulled up some black or more figurines and then tried to say they were depicting the people, and the people that they are depicting are the people in sub-Saharan Africa, not in the Americas. So he changed his argument up because he was not going to win the Blackamoor and he didn't want to go back, and he put the peace pipe clay pipe on us, which denoted someone that was not of Native American, but said closely resembled, but it was supposed to be a character. So they depicted a character in the little peace pipe. We made that clear before we ended the show. But I wanted to bring you back to the origins of the argument because they were talking about gold chains and this, that, and the third. And I came straight off the cusp and told him there was no abos or indigenous people rocking gold. That's an African trait. Go show me someone else in the history of this universe in the past 10,000 years that was rocking gold chains, gold rings, gold bracelets among themselves, and that was not on the continent of Africa that we call Africa today. Go find me those people. What up, Gullah? Everyone that he's going to claim or he's going to show on the screen, any of those depictions are going to be black Moors. And these blackamoor figurines were made by Europeans. None of them are in the Americas. None of them. None. I don't have to make it up. The blackamoor of the wood, being a tragical end of a gallant lord and a virtuous lady, together with the untimely death of their children, wickedly performed by a heathenous and bloodthirsty villain, their servant, the like of which cruelty was never heard. It's 5 pages here. Page number 2. Spin it out. Sharing is caring. Told y'all, man, don't worry about it. It's all gonna be in the description. The blackamoor in the wood. What y'all think the story is telling you about? It ain't telling you that these people was indigenous to Americas. No, the blackamoor is never that. Never that. The mentionings of the blackamoor is even greater. Read the whole story. The blackamoor of the wood, being the tragical end of a gallant lord and virtuous lady, together with the untimely death of their 2 children, wickedly performed by a heathen and bloodthirsty villain, their servant, the like of which cruelty was never heard. The work is free of a known copyright. You find it in Cleveland Magazine. 1820s. I don't want to hear none of that stuff. I don't want to hear none of this stuff because they do not study, bro. They don't study. This man was talking about some figurines and then tried to flip it. He wasn't calling them people no more. He's saying that they depicting people. Yeah, Africans. Africans. That's why I showed y'all the article that I showed y'all, because it's telling you this. All in this article. Watch how, listen, you can count, look, let me keep Control F. Let's see how many times the word Africa show up. 35 times in this article. The article's 11 pages. Ideological notions of blackness and whiteness, dark and light should not distract from the actual African presence in England. His whole notion, their whole notion. Look, in 1653, the Puritan Thomas Hall, cryptovain women who primped their hair and wore makeup should be scorched under the sun until they had the hue of blackamoors to better reflect their inner degeneration. The color of ivory itself was not incidental. The whiteness thought to represent the natural fairness of man's skin. Ivory demonstrated the beauty of whiteness in the case explicitly related to the value of commodity gained through exploration. Ideologically, notions of blackness and whiteness, dark and light, should not distract from the actual African presence in England. So those old black Europeans that one like to talk about are actually who? African presence in England. It is likely that the metaphorical attributes of blackness were increasingly popular precisely because the English began to encounter African people more frequently. M.T.S. Habib found records of 448 individuals in the Tudor and Stuart era who were potentially African, stressing that this is likely not a complete number. Parish records and the increasingly administrative oversight of the Tudor crown make it possible to trace the births, deaths, and baptisms of dozens of blackamoors, particularly in London parishes. One Christian Ethiopian was baptized in London in 1602. Richard, a blackamoor, in 1609. Burials include Peter, a blackamoor, and Miss Locksmith in 1616, and Barbary servant of Mr. Smith in 1623. A Ghanaian, a Guinean diver testified in an Admiralty court case of 1548. Though Italian merchant witnesses complained that his testimony was unlawful because he was a slave. Africans in England held a range of occupational roles, often as skilled laborers. Henry VIII had a black trumpeter in his retinue, while other Africans served as royal pages, laundresses, maids, and goldsmiths. Africans and Moors were present in the household of Henry VIII's first wife, Catherine of Aragon, including the exclava Catalina of Mortro, and Africans lived and worked in the households of Spanish and Portuguese merchants and traders living in London. Ladies and gentlemen, people that witness and love to read and view evidence, the argument is there. When I told you that you can't find indigenous and native peoples in the Americas, I don't care how far back you go, 10,000 years ago, you can't find none of them rocking and wearing gold chains, gold grills, gold around their wrists, gold around their ankles in 10,000 years. Find me the people. Wearing a crown is one thing because you're going to make a crown out of something. And I don't know if all their crowns were made of metal or of some type of metal, because I don't study all of that. Manny might be able to answer that. Thomas might be able to answer that. But you're not going to find one indigenous person in the Americas rocking gold. That shit's African. We like to flaunt, look good, flex our shit, pop our collar, do what we do. So when they were depicting people of black hue or dark skin and calling them so-called blackamoor, in their artistic expression of those people, it was of sub-Saharan. And I told y'all that. I'm just strengthening the argument because he tried to play me. No. These people were in the Americas. No. That's why I kept harping on that. And the one time he got noticed, he got away from the gold and went to a whole peace pipe. And then I was like, man, that ain't even an African right there. He had no argument. That wasn't African. That wasn't nobody in Europe. That ain't even an elbow. He was tripping. So y'all see me scrolling down because there's a reason why I'm scrolling down. Listen to this. Let me start up here. In 1667, Pepys noted that Mingo, Sir William Baton's African servant, had appeared in Baton's will. Baton requested that Mingo become lighthouse keeper, retaining the sum of a 20 a year. Mingo's relatively stable position in Baton's household and Pepys's frequent and not altogether negative depictions of him were indicative of these structures of power imperial intervention. The Virginia slave laws in 1660s were beginning of stricter legislation against Africans based on the need of human labor to produce the vast quantities of tobacco and sugar in North American and Caribbean colonies supplied to Europe. Let me pause real quick. Why is this significant? They just told you that the dude was making pictures of the dude, descriptions, depictions of him. Pepe's frequent and not altogether negative depictions of him. It's right there. Tobacco advertisements presented intermingling. Listen, so these advertisements that y'all be seeing A1 like loving to use, that he keep on self-proclaiming to be black people on there. Tobacco advertisements presented intermingling Africans, Native Americans, and English planters in shared moments of sociability, smoking pipes, or even at times working alongside each other. So they all three appeared on those tobacco advertisements. Art says, now I don't know, we from the tribe of Shabazz by the way of the Choctaw. Yet these fictions of harmony cross racial brotherhood in the 17th and 18th century Atlantic were not indicative of the collapse of the world dependent on African labor, but a sign of its success. Africans were idolized in art or elite fashions as an accoutrement to a society that did not perceive Africans as a threat to English sovereignty at home or in the Americas. As Simon de Candy wrote in the 18th century, the existence of slavery in Abyssinia, Britain, would make it difficult to conceptualize or represent slaves as a visual and palatable ingredient of British society, but slavery was part of the political unconsciousness of Britishness. Brief glimpses into interlinked African lives of parish level or in the port cities may suggest, as Habib posited, a moment in which blackness emerges as an English social category, or in the words of Onyike Nubia, as black sense of self. There is yet little evidence of Africans self-identifying in this way, but unfortunately, there's a little trace of direct African voices at all. It is the realm of literature and fantasy that the most poignant appeals to the humanity of Africans were often imagined by white authors. The celebration of Black beauty, though a transgressive poetic truth, envisaged a space where blackness was not a defect. What the world calls fair is foolish, 'tis allowed. That who are so black be justly proud. Taken in this broader context between the poems continued to perpetuate the idea that black or more so than tawny more or middle color, was remarkably different. Do not let him play games with your intelligence. The man literally showed these figurines after figurine after figurine, trying to denote that these gold-wearing figurines were not of African ancestry, of African acceptance, but in an indigenous one, which was still pseudo and incorrect, because he denotes blackness in the Americas to more, which is a mistake in its own. They keep trying to play us. Hence, you see the pseudo books by the fake Moors and all the other stuff that's being shown here. Show me an indigenous person wearing gold in the Americas. Show me one. You got 10,000 years to find me one. Show me somebody in what we know today is North America, the United States of America, that was rocking a gold chain. Show it to me. I'm waiting. I've been waiting. I give you time. How much time you need? How much time? Let me see if I can get this played. I'm trying to see if I can. There's a reggae song right now. Come on, man. Don't play with us, man. We want to see. We want to see. We want to see. Exactly, Manny. Exactly, Manny. Exactly. That ain't even what y'all do, Manny. And I said that. Y'all don't want no goddamn gold. For what? It had no use to y'all. Y'all didn't give two shits about being flashy. That was our crazy asses. We put a value in that. Then he just tried to superimpose it on the people in the Americas, and it ain't got nothing to do with people in America. Nothing. Bro, that boy, that's so pseudo, boy. Man, he terrible, man. He really tried to play us today. And they were going to let him do it, because that's what they allowed it over there. Hey, I dropped the link in the chat, man. I don't know who's scared. Why y'all scared? Scared of this work, bro? See, they don't come over here. They don't come over here. They got to stay where it's safe at, where they can spin a narrative and confuse the people. They don't, and then the people, they don't even want to hear the other side of the argument. They just want to keep confused. Like, come on, man. Challenge your belief system. This is where your beliefs come to die. They call this nigga a happy slave. Look. Figure 24, happy slave. The fuck he happy. For use, these cabinets of curiosity, these scamming and wonder making of those to this past, those are far away and long ago, are reminders too that prejudice can distort appreciation in ways that damage everyone. Figure 24. Come on, man. We own to your shenanigans, bro. You own to your shenanigans, bro. Black or more. I be gagged. It seems like those Blackamoor figures were based on the indigenous people of Ghana. Just say sub-Saharan Africa. You could say sub-Saharan because that's who they depicted, the people below the Sahara. Not just the Ghanaians. Not just the Ghanaians. Hold on 1 second, y'all. Our goal still is elk teeth. Yeah. Hell yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because y'all appreciate that. It has more value to y'all than gold. Are y'all scared today, bro? Where them dudes at? I gotta go looking for them. I gotta go looking for them. Is that what y'all saying? Okay, hold on 1 second. Hold on. Let's see. Hold on. Let me see. He ain't live. He making music now. Ali Muhammad got a rap CD. Ali Muhammad ain't live. I ain't dealing with Belt. Block City over there. Oh, the dude gonna do a video. He called a video observation. Hold on, y'all. This fool said a Tachnon class 2 observation. So yeah, it's on his heart. It's on his heart. Yeah. It's on his heart. He ain't live. He gonna be live tomorrow. What's today? What's today's date? Today the 10th, ain't it? Why he ain't live? Yeah, today the 10th. It was scheduled for 1:30 p.m. He ain't do the show. So let's go find another pseudo. Let's go to open the knowledge. Is that pseudo live? No. He ain't live doing these long ass shows, 11 hours. We ain't looking at your bullshit for 11 hours. What about Sister Betty? Sister Betty, the pseudo Albo, created her own cult. Is she live? Nope. She ain't live. What a smoke at? Hold on, Betty. Hold up, Betty. What did I just see? What you got on here? What you got on here? I don't identify with Black Moors, Africans, or African Americans. Is this a rant? No, it's 5 hours. I ain't got time for that. Why have a hard time standing on more? Oh yeah, you didn't push Buddy off. The Wire Tribe, pseudonym. She ain't live. I'm looking for the smoke, y'all. Where they at? Cause they running from me. Ty Sam ain't got number 25 subscribers to his channel. Yeah, chatty patty. Certified Saki, he ain't live. He ain't got nothing on his channel. He got 2,000 people, but he ain't got nothing. Let's go to the research guy. He usually live. Where he at? Nope, he ain't live. He did a show talking about repatriation, payment for Black Americans. No, buddy. No, buddy. Your people wasn't enslaved. You indigenous. How you doing a show about reparations? You don't want no. What about that boy Root Words? Is Root Words crackhead ass live? Nope. He ain't live either, boy. What y'all got going on tonight, man? Y'all scared of the smoke? They running. They running. I ain't never seen people run like this. What y'all on? They on she said they running out of lives. They must be on TikTok. What up, 93? Appreciate you, bro. I don't know what's up with them, bro. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what's up with them. It's a disclaimer, Indian. When I told y'all that Black people wear gold, man, I stand on that. And the Black people that I'm talking about that know of African descent. This video long though. This video long. Some people still got to catch the first video from earlier today. But I do want to give a shout out to the Yarbroughs, and I appreciate them allowing us an opportunity to use their video today and giving us permission to use their video. I hope that their listening audience and others will find the information that has been presented today is useful. Remember, those of you who have paid attention to the show the entirety of the time, I am going to make a post with a description of the information of the sources, I should say, that I used today that I couldn't fit in the description.
You will have them at your earliest convenience. I don't know where the elbows at. I mean, I'm looking for them. You know what I'm saying? Hold up. Let me see. Let me hit up now to see. Let me see. He might know something. I don't know. I hit up now to see if he know where the elbows at. That first one. I don't know, but it might not make it. Probably will. Come on. A lot of track. Can't show y'all these puppies though. They'll be detribalized. Look like we ain't got nobody that really want to go to war with us, bro. So is Bottom Kittens live? Yeah, I know I ain't clicking on no dang Callaway shit. That ain't happening. Pseudo Phil Valentine. These dudes do the thing. Now the C said the Moors probably in their TPs. Yeah, we scalping elbows for sure. That's for sure. But man, I really want to show y'all this article about this canoe, man, but I'm gonna have an overload of information in this video, in the post. So, you know, I appreciate everybody tapping in, man. I'm gonna shut this thing down. You know what I'm saying? Stay well, man. Protect your Africanness. If you're a mixed ancestry, protect both sides of your struggle as it makes you who you are today. Hopefully y'all did learn something from this bill today and from earlier dealing with top cats and the pseudos. But I appreciate y'all for tapping in, man. Like the show, share the show, clip it, TikTok it, whatever you want to do. I'm out.